For our community members joining us tonight, I do have, we do have several community members who have requested to address the board, and I see them waiting in our lobby. When we get to the community comments section, I will be letting those callers in, but just a reminder, you do need to be calling from the number you registered with. We'll only be admitting people whose phone numbers appear on that. So if you, I'm seeing several numbers I don't recognize. If you dialed in with a different number, maybe hang up and dial from the number you registered with so we can make sure we admit you when it's your turn to address the board. And if you called in simply to view the meeting, you can go to the homepage, chippewaValleySchools.org, to get the links to view so you can get video and hear the entire meeting this evening. Just want to make sure everyone's aware of that because it's a little different from our usual procedure.
Okay, we are just momentarily waiting for Ms. Aquino to join us. She should be here just in a second. Okay. All right, I think we're going to start the meeting here shortly. Ms. Aquino should be here just in a moment or so and join in at that point. It's 5:02. And so at this time, we'll call the Chippewa Valley Schools Board of Education meeting for October 1st, 2020 to order. We will waive the pledge. The time will be 7:02 again. I'm sorry, 5:02 again. Tonight, additions, deletions would be the next item. We have none today. C would be recognition, presentations, and Mr. Roberts.
You're muted, Ron. Yeah, common error on this stuff is forgetting the mute. Anyways, I'd like to begin by thanking everyone for being here. As you know, this meeting really began Monday night and had to be rescheduled for tonight. And I want to start there and just explain why. On Monday evening, there was a system-wide issue with Teams from Microsoft. So anyone using Teams had issues with it, and we did. And for that reason, we had to adjourn the meeting because there were people who wanted to be at the meeting and could not do so. So that's why the meeting was rescheduled for this evening. So we're kind of considering tonight, we're going to start over, and this is a bit of a redo of Monday. So Administration has spent much time and energy since July working on our school plans. And our plans have been a collaborative effort between administration and leadership from many areas of our school district. For example, the association leadership has been involved, and they represent numerous employee groups. And if you recall, if you've been to other meetings, that planning process began in July. So we kind of received our directions from the state at the end of June, and we began planning using their documents in July. So it was in mid-August that we chose to begin the year in a remote model. And this really was based on at the time, COVID data. At that time in mid-August, COVID data had significantly worsened since when we began to make our plan. So we really decided the safest place to start was in a remote fashion. But since then, the data has improved. But keep in mind, this data is fickle. Nevertheless, both the cases per million of COVID in Macomb County and the positivity rate in Macomb County has declined. Furthermore, the number of cases in both Macomb and Clinton townships have declined.
Hey, Ron, just to stop for a second here. I think we understand that some of the folks that are coming in through phone on listen only are not getting any sound. I just wanted to, maybe Sarah could confirm that or make sure that we got sound out there. Or...
the people from the community who have called in have not been let in. We were waiting for the community comment section. But they were given the view link so they could view all of it.
Okay.
I can admit them now if you'd like, but we do have several people in that lobby that aren't registered. So I'll just admit the registered people if that's what you'd prefer.
No, I think, Sarah, I think it's the live stream that might be having an issue with sound.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
Thank you, Beth. And just to clarify for the community out there listening, again, through Meetings Act of Michigan law, we have to allow our parents to be able to listen to the board and our cabinet when we're speaking through these meetings. If they were not to be allowed because technical or otherwise, as happened Monday, we could be cited for Open Meetings Act. So we'll just take a second. We're getting through this new technology and setup that Mr. Roberts is speaking about, and we'll begin again.
I'm getting sound on both streams, so I'm not sure what happened, but I think we're okay.
Okay. Ron, is Kim at our desk if we had a parent that was having issues, or Sarah, are you available to take a phone call if there were a parent that still has issues trying to stream it or, make sure it's not something on our end?
I can try.
Okay. Is there a number we could give?
723-2202. I'll tune out so I can address issues as they come in.
Okay, so that way if a parent that still is not hearing, they can contact us so we can hold the meeting up or otherwise to take care of that. Okay, we will start then. Again, sorry to interrupt, Mr. Roberts, please continue.
Okay, so where I left off was I was talking about the data, and I had talked about the positivity rate in the cases per million in Macomb County. And I also mentioned the decline in the number of cases in both Macomb and Clinton townships. So since the onset of the school year, we received many emails from our constituents, And needless to say, there are a variety of opinions. Each opinion expressed represents different family situations, work situations, and most importantly, student learning styles. Some of those emails are from those who are satisfied with remote instruction, and some of those emails are from those who are dissatisfied. So this has been a trying time for all of us as school leaders, and that's both administration and school board members, because we pride ourselves on addressing individual needs. Operating a school district during a pandemic has presented challenges we've never seen before. Please trust me when I say we want everyone to be happy. We want everyone in a program that meets their needs, and we want everyone safe. This has been extremely challenging to do. Recently, the board asked administration for a return to school plan that involved the elementary level and programs for students with special needs. We have previously presented this plan to the board, and tonight on the agenda is a motion to approve the plan. There is a possibility that many of you viewing this meeting this evening are not fully aware of the plan. And for that reason, we're going to review it before moving on with the agenda. So I'm really proud of the work done by our Educational Services Department to put this plan together. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Don Broski, our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, and him and his team are going to present an abbreviated version of our much longer plan. So Don?
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. I'm going to be sharing the screen right now for you. So let's see here. We'll share that. So tonight, the Educational Services team will provide a brief presentation on what a transition from the current remote learning environment to a hybrid learning model would look like in terms of scheduling and the health and safety protocols that are in place for our elementary students in grades K through 5, plus our K-12 creative learning program and our early childhood special education students. We can also clarify questions about the hybrid model. To begin, I'd like to turn it over to Paul Sibley, our Executive Director of Secondary Education, who will explain the proposed hybrid schedule. Mr. Sibley?
Yes, Dr. Broski, if you would just go to that next slide. Thank you very much. Good evening, board and community. In front of you, what you see is the hybrid plan that we are proposing this evening. After our presentation at the beginning of last week, we have made some slight adjustments to our plan. This past week, we've been spending time speaking with our association, with special services, and within our department to come up with what we feel is a schedule that reflects the work of our operations committee that was working over this past summer. Our plan reflects our commitment to maximizing the amount of time our students have with our teachers in a face-to-face model, while also allowing our elementary schools and our secondary students that are being brought up tonight to maintain a safe amount of social distancing throughout their day. This model also maximizes instructional time for our students based on our commitment to provide a full year of academic growth to our students. And as you can see from this chart, our elementary students will be divided up into Group A and Group B, and they will attend school on alternating days from Monday through Thursday. Group A and Group B will attend school in person on alternating Fridays. The Group A and B groups are determined, the Group A and B groups are determined by address, so that siblings who live together will be attending school on the same days, no matter what level they are. So this would allow for a hybrid model at the middle school or high school model. It would keep siblings going to school on the same days. We also looked at transportation routes to make sure that our A and B groups made sense to allow for social distancing on school buses to the best of our ability. Finally, we've also scheduled our classes proactively so that we were prepared for a hybrid model and can make our class sizes as appropriate as possible to allow for efficient social distancing upon our students' return. Some final adjustments to our group A or B scheduling was then made after schedules were final. This was a very time-consuming task, and we will not, be able to make changes for families requesting a change, unfortunately, in order to ensure social distancing to the best of our ability for the kids in our schools. So students who are not attending school in person in this schedule will be provided direction and work that will allow them to continue their education on the days they're at home. Students will be notified about their schedule, whether they're an A or a B student, once the district has made a final decision about returning, as well as the dates of return and a schedule for the first couple of weeks. As you can also see, the hybrid plan does not impact our CVVA students, our Chippewa Valley Virtual Academy students, who will continue to receive instruction remotely as they have been. So this proposal suggests, as you can see, that our early childhood special education students and our K through 12th grade CLP students will be attending 5 days of in-person instruction. Our ECSC and CLP students will not be divided into groups. They will attend school for 5 days each week. These families would receive specific information about their schedules once the final decision is made. We really do believe that our hybrid model and our safety protocols allow for safe social distancing while also maximizing the amount of instruction and social interaction for our students. We'll continue to monitor the local situation as we plan for this return and for a return for our other grade levels as well. But we are prepared with those plans. Mr. Broski, will you go to the next slide, please? If you go to our website, you can look at our return to school guidelines. This is a very in-depth, detailed description of the many different nuances of what school will look like in a hybrid plan or in a face-to-face plan in our schools. It will cover a number of different categories and we'll share with you the many different things that we have in place. We continue to monitor and change these guidelines as things change. For example, some of our athletics approaches will be changing based on new information that just came out this week. So these, again, cover all aspects of a school day and can be applied to all levels, not just our elementary schools. You go to the next slide, please, Dr. Broski. So on this slide, you'll see all of the different categories that our plan covers. It talks about personal protection equipment, facial coverings, health screening, the health department guidelines that we are faced to follow. Our health clinics, how we'll handle sick students and staff, what our school offices will look like and how we'll handle visitors, what our classrooms may look like, hallways, cafeterias, lockers, cubbies at all levels. We'll talk about arrival and dismissal procedures, playgrounds, recess, cleaning routines, and hygiene, and what we'll do when we have suspected cases of COVID-19. I can tell you that our building principals have been working extremely hard to make sure that every one of our buildings and all of the unique features of those buildings are prepared for a return of our students. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our Executive Director of Elementary Education, Ms. Marina Licari, who will talk a little bit more about some of those protocols.
Thank you, Paul. The board, as Mr. Sibley had mentioned, we really do have a very comprehensive plan. The document that was referenced is, I believe at this point, 26 pages long. There's an abundance of information there to help our families and staff see what we have been working on and what we do have in place for a safe return to school. Dr. Broski, if you wouldn't mind, the next slide touches on facial coverings. And I think this is an area that we've received many questions about, and we just want to clarify that facial coverings are required for all students. That also applies for students that use district transportation. And we're asking that students, when arriving and dismissing from school, do wear their facial coverings. Obviously, for any indoor activities, including PE, students will continue to wear those facial coverings. And the district will provide facial coverings for anyone who does not have one. We have both adult size facial coverings and children or child size facial coverings. In addition, we do have face shields for our staff members, but as outlined in the governor's roadmap, a face shield is not a replacement for a facial covering. So as far as facial coverings go at the elementary level, we do have some unique procedures in place to help support facial coverings so that our students do not lose those facial coverings. In some of our buildings, part of their procedures will be to provide students with lanyards so that they can maintain that facial covering throughout the day. or they have other procedures in place like specific bins or areas in which a student can place a facial covering when they do go outside for recess, because that would be the exception to facial covering. When students are outside, they are not going to be wearing a facial covering, but they will have a safe individual spot to store those facial coverings. Additionally, when any student is eating, they are permitted to remove their facial covering, and then upon exit or finishing their meal, they would then put their facial covering back on. So we do have those procedures in place. We will make facial coverings available for anyone who does not have one. And we have been very clear by posting signs at our doors and signs throughout our buildings so that not only our students and staff are aware of this, also any guests or those that are coming to the building to drop off their children are aware. If you wouldn't mind, Dr. Broski, on the next two slides, we have an opportunity to kind of take you into some of the work that has been done and is currently finishing up in our elementary schools, and at the same time is occurring at our secondary schools, so that students know exactly what procedures are in place, staff knows what procedures are in place, and it really helps, like Mr. Sibley mentioned, maintain social distancing and safe and healthy procedures in our school buildings. Here you have an example of what you can find in all 12 of our elementary schools. Signs posted on the walls throughout the school building that indicate some of our procedures, like wearing a facial covering that covers your face and your nose, maintaining safe distances throughout the school building. And additionally, those good hygiene practices like covering your cough or covering your sneeze in the proper way. And additionally, any other good hygiene practices like washing your hands often and making certain that you stay home if you are sick. On the next slide, you'll see additional pictures that will help you kind of get a glimpse of what it would look like for a student entering some of our buildings. Each building is unique, and we know that. Some buildings are one level, other buildings have 2 levels, but each building administrator has spent an extensive amount of time. They'd probably tell you a little too much time because we have daily meetings, and we've had daily meetings since August to ensure that these procedures are in place, that we brainstorm what's best to bring in our students and maintain safe distances. So here you have an example of what would be a one-way sticker on a floor to indicate that that hallway in this specific building is a one-way hallway. Building administrators have mapped out their buildings, and based on the size of their hallways and the flow of traffic, they've determined if some hallways should be a one-way, or if they are large enough, they may be a two-way hallway, but like the middle picture here, you see stickers on the floor to indicate what side of the lane or what side of the hallway students are to walk through the hallway. On the right side here, you see a picture that says, please choose another seat. This is a great example of what our students will find in our cafeterias. Students will be assigned 2 seats in the cafeteria with their cohort or with their classroom at the elementary level, and they will be seated in every other seat. So there will always be a seat that is off limits, if you will, or not to be used during lunchtime. So in each of our cafeterias, some have round tables, some have square tables, but seats will be designated for students so that they know exactly where to sit, and the seats that need to be empty during lunchtime. In some of our buildings, if their cafeteria does not have enough space to properly distance, they will use other areas like an MPR, an LGI, or even a media center if need be, to spread students out during lunchtime. For the most part, our buildings do have plenty of space in the cafeteria, and students will be seated with their class, and they will be seated in every other seat during that time. If you wouldn't mind, Dr. Broski, I believe on the next slide, you have an additional example of another school and their lunch procedure. So the sticker looks a little different, but you can see there are yellow stickers indicating every other seat so that students know where to sit, and students will also be seated based on a seating chart in the lunchroom. You have some stickers on the floor that show students where to stand. That's just one example, but our buildings have been very creative. They have variations. They may have some paw prints printed or painted rather on the outside of their buildings to indicate locations where students can stand at arrival and dismissal, or where they will line up if they're coming back into the building for recess. But there's been a lot of thought put into these plans so that building principals and staff know exactly how they can help students when they arrive to school, when they're walking throughout the building during the school day, and when they exit the building. On the bottom left here, you have an example of what a classroom may look like in one of our elementary buildings. You'll notice that the desks are all facing in the same direction. And you can't see it very clearly in this picture, but each desk is designated as an A or a B desk, meaning that on a hybrid day where the students in group A attend, they will be in assigned seats in a specific seat of one of those two seats that you see. And then on the B day, which would be a Tuesday or a Thursday or every other Friday, the other group of students would sit in that seat. So again, pretty much like the lunchroom, every other seat, but assigned seats so that students know exactly where they can sit during the school day. With the support of our custodial staff and our custodial team, obviously high touch areas are going to be cleaned throughout the school day, and those procedures will be in place to ensure that our buildings are cleaned thoroughly throughout the day, but also at night to prepare for the next group that will be entering the school building. But essentially what we really want the board to see with these pictures is that a lot of work has been done. We continue to do this work. Our building administrators with their teams have really gone through that return to school plan and covered every area of the school day to ensure that plans are in place so that we can safely return, have clear policies and procedures in place that we not only communicate to staff, but we communicate to parents. Everything from what time the buses will release students, how students will enter the building, when our parents who are driving their students to school, when they will release their students from the car and accompany them to the school doors, procedures for entering and exiting the school office, and how we would drop students off if they were late, what procedures we can have in place throughout the day to ensure students feel safe. We've even worked on plans on how we can make lunch more efficient so that students have as much time to eat as possible, what we can do during recess to section off areas so that students and their class that they belong with throughout the school day play in a specific area each day, and they get an opportunity to rotate throughout the playground areas throughout the week. But we really have spent an extensive amount of time going over the plans, refining the plans, and making sure that our school buildings are ready to receive students and that they are aware of the policies and procedures that are in place, but they also know that it's a safe place where they can come and learn, but they can also come and enjoy the school experience.
Thank you, team. At this point, I just want to remind you that the return to school guidelines, which are found on our website, as Ms. Licari and Mr. Sibley said, are very comprehensive and can kind of get more granular for you than maybe this presentation would have. But we are more than happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time with regard to the hybrid plan.
So, board members, is there anything that you'd like to ask about before we move on? No? All right. Okay, I'd like to thank the Educational Services team. You can see.
Ron.
Yes.
Mr. Patrick.
Yes.
Yeah, I get my mic on here. So, want me to put my thing on here? Let me put my video on. There you go. So, okay, Frank. So my question is, Mr. Roberts. So I know that it's been said that once you sign up for virtual or a program, that you're locked into your choice for the rest of the year. So I'm just wondering if there were parents that were extremely concerned about this situation and actually had a above normal concern about changing their plan. Is there a possibility that they'd have the ability to sit down and discuss this?
So, Mr. Patzert, I just want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly. You are talking about a student who is currently in the remote plan that if we
Right.
approve this tonight, we'll go back to the classroom. And if there is a way that that student can move into the virtual academy.
That's my question. If there were people that have medical concerns or extremely more nervous about the hybrid plan, and we're extremely overzealous about switching. Would that
Yeah,
be,
so
would that be a concern?
okay, I'm not the scheduling expert. That would be our administrators who oversee secondary and elementary education. So I'm gonna go to them just to explain some of the challenges with scheduling and making switches. So I'm not sure, Paul or Marina, this is an elementary issue.
So yes, so I'm familiar. I'm sorry. So I'm familiar with the scheduling. I am familiar. So you don't need to review that for me. So if
Right.
you want to review it for the viewers, that's fine. But my question is still a simple question. If I'm parent A, I'm in the hybrid and I want to go to the virtual, and I am overzealous about my child safety. Go to Marina, see how she would respond to that.
All right, Marina.
Sure. Thank you, Andy. So obviously with our scheduling process, we have scheduled very tight, and we do not have many seats at this time in either the current remote plan or the CBVA. But of course, in any situation, if there was an extreme situation that there was a medical condition that needed to be honored, we try to work with that. But again, it would depend on the seats that are available. And we do have limited seats available at this time.
One of the challenges, if I may add, Andy, one of the challenges we might face too is where those seats would be available. So when you look at the virtual academy, you know, they're different by grade level. And so we don't know where those seats would be. So it's hard to answer the question, but again, as Marina said, if it's a medical condition, we would look at it to see if we could come up with a solution, but there is no guarantee. You know, we did from the get-go talk about the virtual academy, especially for those with health concerns, as the best option for them.
So if a parent with a child at a certain grade level were to reach out, and that grade level had some openings, would that be a possibility?
Well, Mr. Patzer, what we have tried to clarify is that if a decision is made, we will be reviewing this at either the trimester period, which would be early December, or at the semester period, which would be in mid to late January for secondary. That is what has been conveyed to folks. We're certainly open to taking a look at considerations, but part of what the process that we've gone through is that we will be reviewing at those two times.
So we're clear that trimester December, people will have an option to reconsider their choice. In trimester December?
That's when, yeah, they can ask for that, Andy. And again, it still will be based on where there is space though, because right now by utilizing our own staff through the scheduling process, which I know we've explained before, I won't go into the details now with you. It's why we have such limited space. We can't create new sections essentially without dissolving others. And so the idea of dissolving others is really not likely in any cases, because you would have to have a full class of kids looking to change the option. So you wouldn't be able to add sections of classes because we don't have the staffing to do so.
Okay, so I've heard the December trimester date brought up several times as far as a time of opportunity for parents. Am I understanding that properly? Or do they not have a choice in to make changes in December, or do they do have a choice?
Well, they do have a choice, and we would be looking at it at that time. It's just that we can't promise that it would still be doable at that time. So we are looking at those times as times to review and look at schedules, find openings when we can. But it depends on the number of people that are asking, that we can't say yes, that we can guarantee it to all families.
Okay, I just want to make it sure for clear for the people that are listening
Yeah, thank you.
that, how the system is operating. Okay, thank you.
Are there any
Mr.
other
Bednar?
questions from board members?
Yes, Mr. Roberts, I have one. Where are we in terms of rolling out a similar plan in regards to grades 6 through 12?
We could have a plan. We have the plan ready. It's a matter of determining the date. So all we need to have is just a little bit of time in order to implement it. So with this plan, our original request was 2 weeks, and we could do the same thing with secondary. The plan is ready to go. It's a matter of just targeting a date. And we have talked about this administratively about some possibilities, depending upon, of course, what happens here this evening.
Okay, further questions by the board?
Yeah, I have one.
Yes, go ahead.
Can we talk about PPE and the staff and what they have to do to get it? Like, does every building have a big storage place of it, or do they have to request it? How long does it take to get it? And I'm not just talking about masks, I'm talking about like gloves for CLP that are changing diapers, that kind of thing.
I could speak to that, and I'm sure Tara could also. But each of our buildings have received and do have an inventory list that they update weekly, and they have designated either their health aide or their building administrator as the person who will keep tabs on the inventory to make certain that there's enough inventory to supply staff and to inform central office when there is a need to reorder because stock is getting low. But our district nurse has worked with our health aides, has worked with several staff members to let them know what we do have available, which would be more than just facial coverings and masks, and gloves. But we have things such as gowns to assist with changing with some of our younger students, face shields, like I had mentioned earlier, but enough PPE to get us started, and the inventory list to help us maintain the numbers that we have in our buildings and ensure that we keep ordering so that we have those supplies in place. And not to mention, we do have additional supplies that have not been delivered to the buildings that we are keeping in the warehouse and in storage so that we can easily get them to the buildings when their inventory is low. Those supplies also, Jill, just to mention, will be locked up and will be maintained by whoever is the point person, whether that be the building administrator or the health aide. So they're in one central location. And what our buildings have done is they've designated a few things that need to be delivered to our teachers so that they have them in the classrooms readily available. And when that supply gets low, then they can let that point person know, hey, I ran out of facial coverings, or I ran out of, can I have more?
Frank, I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Cardamone.
I'm wondering if we're comfortable with our staffing, if we're anticipating unexpected retirements or leaves, if we have the staff for monitoring the hallways, playgrounds, that kind of thing.
I'm going to have Adam address that.
Good evening, everybody. So as I've explained to Superintendent Roberts earlier today, I kind of put our staffing issues into two buckets, if you will. We have our typical staffing issues that we have under a normal year. And over the last several years, it's always a challenge to get support staff team members, whether that's custodians, lunch monitors, crossing guards, paraeducators. Those staff we're always struggling to get and to retain our support staff. That's true this year, that's true last year, and it'll be true down the road. So we're going to face those challenges, and we're facing those challenges right now anyway. But to answer your question, do we anticipate more retirements and leaves? We anticipate some. To the degree we're not sure. I think once a decision is made, we will gather more information. People will put those requests in at that time. One of the advantages of opening elementary first versus opening elementary and secondary is with the elementary. We can utilize some of the staff that are at the secondary level that are in the support roles when there's not students in the building and push them down into the elementary in those critical needs areas. That'll give us a pretty good handle on where our major staffing concerns are. At this point, so I don't really have a definite answer for you. It is a concern. Staffing is always a concern. And as we roll into, potentially roll into a hybrid situation where we have more staff requesting an eFEMLA or retiring, it's a possibility. It's a possibility. And we won't know that until we start getting closer. But like I said, with rolling out an elementary hybrid plan, we can address the needs, any critical needs by repurposing some staff. And again, if we stagger a secondary hybrid to start, that'll give us time to really evaluate and figure out where those critical shortages are and how we can fill those areas. But again, I want to highlight that staffing in general is an issue. So just filling those positions will be a challenge.
Frank, I have a couple questions.
Absolutely.
Hi, I am wondering two things. One is, what is our maximum number of students that we will have in a lunchroom? Because I just, I'm concerned about lunchrooms. And so I was wondering, like, what's the maximum that we're going to have? And do we think that's manageable, or should we be adding any lunch times or something?
So Denise, I can touch on that when it comes to elementary. I had shared at one of the previous meetings that when we looked at our hybrid numbers and we look at our largest elementary school, that elementary school will not have more than 300 students in the building on a given day. So if we break that down to 6 grade levels, we obviously do not have more than 50 students in that grade level having lunch at one time. Now, do we have multiple grade levels together? Sometimes we do. So to be fair, to answer your question, it could range from anywhere between 50 to maybe 75 students. However, the majority of our buildings, that is not true. You'll have a much lower number. So for those larger buildings, they do have the option to use an overflow space, which would be an MPR or an LGI or a media center. But even in our largest building, they have enough space to house each lunch with appropriate distancing, where they would use every other seat in the lunchroom. We even have one of our smallest buildings where no student will sit in the same seat throughout the school day in the lunchroom.
Oh, I see. We're going to have students be in different seats. That's great. The other thing is, because we had to postpone our meeting on Monday, do we feel that we have enough time now to open by October 12th in order to get everything done that we need to get done in case there's any staff issues, et cetera?
Denise, we've been preparing this for a long time.
Okay.
We are ready to go.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions by the board?
Yeah, Frank, I do have one. And I apologize. I don't know if maybe I missed this, but it's along the lines of Andy's question. I guess I don't understand that it seems like if a parent wants to go back to the virtual academy, the seats in the virtual academy, aren't those limitless? I don't understand the scheduling issues with that.
So
who wants to take that?
I can answer it.
Go ahead.
So they're not limitless because we still have to you still have class sizes, George. And so each teacher who's teaching a class, it has to be manageable for that teacher to teach those students in front of them. And so with the virtual academy, we still are held to the same standard as we would in the other classroom because we want to offer the same educational experience to our students. And so it's not limitless because we have assigned Chippewa Valley teachers to teach those courses. And so therefore we are keeping the same class sizes as we normally would for in-person instruction.
That makes sense. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other questions by the board?
I have a few more.
Yeah, absolutely.
First one is, so the mask mandate, I realize that's a state mandate. But do we, do we have a policy? What is going to be the policy regarding students or staff that have a medical exemption? Are we notifying parents in the same classroom? What is going to be I don't want to say punishment, but what happens if somebody doesn't wear a mask? That kind of thing.
Marina, would you like to address this? I know you've had lots of discussions about masks.
Yeah, and actually we've had plenty of discussions, and obviously with any student that does have a medical condition and there is an opportunity for their physician to fill out a medical waiver, of course, we need to respect that, but we also need to respect their privacy. That's not something that we could freely share, that somebody has a medical waiver on file, but just to impart that we are aware that there may be some exceptions and that we work with those families and we work with those students so that they feel that they're getting the same opportunity and experience as everyone else. As far as consequences or steps that are in place, what we can say is that we follow the school code of conduct. And when we go through that process, just like we would with any other situation where somebody may refuse or may not follow the rules that are in place. But really from an administrative end, our goal is to find out the why. Why might this be, and try to work with the student or the family so that we can support whatever questions they may have and come up with a solution so that we can help everybody feel safe in the environment.
So just to clarify, parents in the classroom will not be notified if there's someone that will not be wearing a mask officially. I mean, I know it'll get back, but I'm just yes, that's correct.
So you can see, obviously, and that could be something that somebody would note, but it would be no different than a student who is not vaccinated. We can't share that information. That's private information. So it's not something that we can announce as a school, as a classroom teacher, or as a district representative.
Okay. My next question is about disinfecting high traffic areas. And in the elementary schools, there are sensory rooms and that kind of thing. How often are bathrooms in high touch areas being disinfected?
Marina?
Of course. So at minimum, high touch surfaces will be cleaned every 4 hours. So throughout the school day, but those of us that have spent enough time in elementary school know that that's just not practical. Our custodians are busy all throughout the school day, and our custodial staff in the evening, they're very busy at the end of the school day. So those surfaces will be cleaned throughout the school day. When there is a need or an additional need, obviously our custodial staff will be called in, but we will also provide for each of our classrooms and office areas additional product if in the event that somebody needs to wipe down an area like a smart board or a keyboard of a computer while they're working in a space. But we will make those things available. But our custodial staff is very confident that they can maintain the cleaning of high touch areas and our bathrooms that are either community restrooms or individual restrooms that are in the classroom.
If I may just add on to that, it's important to note too that we're also going to be utilizing hand sanitizer as often as possible. So in addition to the cleaning of high touch surfaces, in and out of classrooms, it's going to be encouraged that kids are using hand sanitizer, going out to recess, back in from recess. So in addition to the cleaning, we're also taking other steps to make sure that kids are, keeping clean themselves.
Frank, I have another question.
I want to make sure
Each time
Jill.
I hear something, I'm sorry, what did you
Just want to
say?
make sure Jill is all set.
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jill.
Jill, was that your
That's
question?
okay. I'm good for now.
All right, Ms. Aquino, please.
Yeah, so you expressed that the code of conduct would be in place for the masks, if they were purposely not wanting to wear their mask, that we would have a disciplinary route, just like the steps that we take, but it's not in our code of conduct. So are students going to be expected, or parents expected to sign something that says that they're going to adhere to these disciplinary steps, if there are any, what they are?
Marina?
Yeah, so in the code of conduct, it does state that following school rules is a requirement. So that would be a school rule because, of course, not only is it a mandate from the governor, but it is an expectation that we have in place for our students.
Okay. I had another question, but it's gone from my head. So thank you.
And if I could, if it would be appropriate at this time, just to touch again back on what Jill had asked as far as sensory rooms. I did not answer that, but any areas that do have soft touch surfaces, we are asking that those things that can be removed, that can't be cleaned, are removed. Those items that can be cleaned, that need to be cleaned in between use. So we do have, in addition to the product that's in our school buildings to clean and disinfect, our custodians, and Scott could touch on this, do have access to sprayers that help to clean space appropriately and quickly, so that if there's a need in between use, we could clean those areas.
All right.
Bednar,
Yeah.
I have a follow-up to something that Ms. Aquino had asked about a timeline.
Yeah.
One of our buildings went into quarantine yesterday, and it will not be open, and people will not be returned by October 12th. So what is our plan for that building?
Our plan for that building is to open it on October 19th.
Mr. Bednar, I have questions regarding quarantining. I'm not sure if that's for part of our discussion later on in the agenda, or if that would be appropriate.
I would say it's appropriate, Ms. Cardamone. We're talking about opening the schools and about quarantine and so on. So yeah, absolutely. You have a question.
Right. So if we have a teacher quarantining, is that a word? Quarantining, I guess. What is, so the teacher is, but the students aren't. What is, how is that going to be handled?
Sure, I'll have Adam address that.
So one of the things that we've worked on with our Teachers Association is in a situation like that, we do have the option that the teacher would, as long as they were asymptomatic, not experiencing symptoms, even if they were experiencing symptoms and still were able to teach, that they could reverse teach back into the classroom. So from their home station, so if they were forced to quarantine because of contact, or they were positive for COVID-19, that they could reverse teach back into the classroom from their house. We would still need a responsible adult in the classroom to make sure that student behavior was monitored and the order of the classroom was still maintained, but the instruction could still be maintained or handled by our certified teacher. So two things is that would potentially decrease our dependency on subs, which I think is important because, again, even in a non-COVID state, a non-pandemic, subs are an issue. And I would anticipate as districts begin to open up, there will be a drain on subs anyway. So this gives us an opportunity for our teaching staff to now teach back into the classroom via our technology. So while the students would be coming into the building, our teacher would then be quarantined at home and teaching from their house back in the classroom. Now, we have this in concept. We have agreement on this. Now we will see how this works in implementation. If that does not work, then we will go back to what we've done in the past when we've had a teacher out with pneumonia or the flu or anything like that, where they had to be out for an extended period of time, and we would get a long-term sub or a sub for those 10 school days, 14 days total calendar days to carry out the duties. That's why we like the idea, and we're thankful that the association was in agreement to utilizing this other approach. In addition to that, the district has always utilized district subs. We've employed district subs in the past, typically a small number, around anywhere from 10 to 15. And that's what we've had on hand, regardless of the number of absences. We've held those. Those are what we've had every day coming into the district to cover shortages. This year, we're at 40. We have 40 district subs. So in addition to the opportunity to get day-to-day subs, if a teacher's sick, they can get a day-to-day sub who may fill out, may say, I want to take that teaching assignment. If for some reason that doesn't happen because of sub shortage, we have 40 district subs available to us. So we're hoping between this agreement of reverse teaching back into the classroom, and then having 40 district subs that will be able to handle, any staff member, any teacher that would have to quarantine. Now, if they become sick and they're not able to teach, then obviously we're not expecting them to get on and teach. And in that case, we would utilize either one of our district subs, or we would be requesting a day-to-day sub to cover their classroom.
Okay, a follow-up. So the other part of that would be, so we have a classroom that needs to be quarantined. And that classroom was in the lunchroom with the other, say, third graders. So now are we quarantining an entire third grade for 2 weeks? And then do they, if a class or a grade or whatever, are they then being taught remotely during that time that they're quarantined?
So that is a possibility. So as we get into, one of the things that I've learned is when I think I have a handle on a scenario or a situation, there seems to be another scenario or situation we have not thought of. It happens. But I think what we've done is we've got frameworks of things in place that will now help us solve those issues. And so while we haven't gone down that road and we haven't experienced that yet, since our teachers have been teaching remotely, we can easily switch to a remote learning platform because we've been doing it for several weeks now. So to answer your question, if a grade level or a building had to switch over in the class, the actual students had to quarantine for 14 days, yes, they could switch over to that remote learning. Now the caveat to that is dependent on the teacher, right? So if the teacher is not experiencing symptoms that would force them to not be able to teach, we'd have to get a sub at that point. And there is challenges with that, and I've already discussed or explained that. But as long as the teacher is asymptomatic or is able to do the instruction, then yes, we would flip that switch to remote learning at that point. Maureen and Paul, did I miss anything on that? Is there anything you want to
I would just add, yeah, Laura, you mentioned, say we have a student who tests positive and they had gone into the cafeteria. Just by going into the cafeteria with other students doesn't necessarily mean that every student in that cafeteria would have to be quarantined. So what we would have to look at is, again, that contact tracing to see if there was what was determined as a close contact, which is within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more. So if you're only passing, for example, or you're only briefly walking by someone, the way it's gone so far for us is that the health department would determine that is not a close contact, and they would not be at risk at that time as far as the need to quarantine. So that's where, the health department has talked a lot to us about passing times, about, walking by kids, assuming they're wearing masks and they're not stopping to congregate and they are just passing, then they would not be determined as a close contact.
So what about, so I get where you're going to have assigned seats and they'll know who's at their table and who's around them for 15 minutes or longer. But one of the reasons why my children never in their career got school lunch was because it takes so long. How are you going to know who's standing next to them in line to get lunch? That kind of thing. Because that's going to be 15 minutes. I mean, let's face it.
Well, it could. I mean, keep in mind, I think back to the high school. I mean, you get at some of the high school lunches prior to the pandemic, you get 800 kids through a lunchroom, in 30 minutes. So you'd be amazed at how quickly kids do get through the line. So we would be social distancing in those lines still. And I know at the elementary, their plan is to release by table. So you're limiting the number of kids who are getting in line at a given time. And so the line will still move fairly well. And now, because we have cameras in our schools, that if we really did have a question, the utilization of those cameras could come in handy as well.
And
sorry.
Sorry, if I could add, elementary is just a tad different because at the elementary level, we do pre-order lunch. So we do have an idea and we do know who's ordered what. We do have the luxury with our hybrid plan that our food service has brought us the most favorite day on the lunch menu, which is pizza day, which will occur both on a Monday and a Thursday. So now we have a predictable count and we know what to expect because that is the most purchased lunch on the menu. So both groups will have a pizza day. And because we are releasing by table, we can maintain that space, but our lunch servers will already have a list and know who's getting what and who has ordered what. And of course, we have additional in the event that a student did not order.
And Marina, maybe you could mention about how the lunch cards will not be used and how we're going to be taking a look at barcodes.
Yes, typically in an elementary setting, we do have pocket charts where students find their lunch card, and then that's what takes time because they have to find their card and then hand it over to the cashier who then scans it and they go and get their lunch. We have eliminated that because again, it's a high touch area where students congregate. So what our media center clerks and our food service staff has done is they've worked together with their building, clerical staff and administrators to copy and scan all the barcodes from those cards with a student picture and a student name and kind of minimize them and made them smaller and put them into binders, or a binder rather, with various sheets that indicate grade level, teacher's class, student picture, barcode, so that whoever is the cashier for the day can easily just flip to that section, find the student's barcode, and scan that code so they can just move on quickly through the line. So we've cut back the high touch areas, and we've also put a system in place that will cut back some of the time that's lost standing in line.
One final question. In terms of notifying of quarantine. So the health department tells us we need to shut down this third grade classroom at 11:30 in the morning. Are they have to leave right away, right? Like, how does that work in terms of getting the children home? Transportation wise, parent notification, that kind of thing.
Marina, have we talked about that one?
So we have in the Macomb County Health Department guidelines, it does say that if there is a student who is sick or quarantined, that we do not have them use district transportation. So in a situation like that, if we had a classroom that did have to quarantine and we were given a time in the middle of the school day, what we would have to do is obviously contain that classroom and use, if we couldn't use that classroom, a designated space where we could contact families and ask that they pick up their child. And of course, we would have to, with our staff, wait until every student could be picked up because of course at 11:30 in the morning, that may not be a convenient time for a family member to get to school and pick up their child. So we would work with those families, but keep those students obviously in a space where they can also be social distanced, remove anyone that may show signs or symptoms of COVID-19 and have them sit in our clinic or sit in one of our, what we refer to as an isolation area where somebody who is sick would sit and wait to be picked up with a staff member.
Thank you. I think, Mr. Bednar, that's the end of my questions.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, Frank, Andy, I have a question.
Mr. Patzer, please.
Okay, so through the correspondence we received through the community in the last couple of weeks, I noticed a lot of people were talking about volunteering or parent help. And I wonder if we considered how we considered parent usage if we are considering it. And that's my question.
Well, I know that this has been talked about, so Marina, go ahead. What were the discussions?
Yes, so per our guidelines and the committee work and the recommendations that we have stated that at this time, parent volunteers are not going to be permitted so that we will not have that increased traffic flow in and out of the building. But for any of our staff members, they will go through a screening process each day. We are going to ask our families to screen at home each day before they send their child. And in the event that there was a staffing concern or issue, we would, of course, problem solve and brainstorm together a solution. But at this time, we are not going to have parent volunteers in the school buildings.
Okay. I had a quick question myself, just regarding reporting. I know that we have HIPAA laws and privacies that that we have to be concerned about as a school district and how this news comes about if we're a staff member becomes sick, and what are we allowed to do reporting wise to notify our community? I know we're very limited, but just I don't think we've received some emails, as Mr. Patrick said too, also by employees who wondered how they would be notified.
Sure. Mr. Blanchard? Dr. Blanchard.
Well, thank you, Mr. Roberts. Yeah, so we have been sending notifications out to our schools. So if a particular building had a positive case, we are notifying the staff within that building that there was a positive case. We follow that up by indicating that if they were considered a close contact, that either our district nurse or the Macomb County Health Department would have been following up with them, would already have been in communication with them regarding what they need to do to quarantine. So the communication happens, it does happen rather quickly, sometimes a little longer just because of that contact tracing. It's important to make sure that we've done that contact tracing, because that's how we determine who next to contact, whether or not they need to quarantine themselves. Once we've individually contacted those people that were considered a close contact, then we send a communication out that a staff member has tested positive. Now, to this point, there has not been a need to communicate that to the community at large in a regular, fashion, because we haven't had students in the building. We have sent communication out in regards to if there was an issue with athletics, and we did send some communication out in regards to the building that we had to quarantine, because when we had to quarantine was the middle of the day and instruction needed to stop because teachers needed to leave the building. Again, if there is a staff member that had tested positive in the building, we will be sending communication out to the school community indicating such. And again, it'll be a similar message. If there is a need for a particular individual to quarantine, a member, the district nurse or the Macomb County Health Department will be in contact with them. And then we will send that communication out. So we're able to do this rather quickly. I did provide notice to the board on Monday, or actually last week, anticipating our board meeting this past Monday, just notifying the board that we would be contracting services with an additional nurse. We do have a district nurse who works a range of hours with us, but roughly about 30 hours a week. And those, what she does is typical duties that we need a nurse for within the school district. With COVID-19 and the extra layer of support that's needed, I did inform the Board of Education that we would be hiring an additional nurse for this school year, 40 hours a week, if you will, to man a COVID-19 hotline for our employees to give, be the liaison between us and the Macomb County Health Department. And that will ensure we have prompt communication with our employees, our school community, the health department. And I think that's a critical piece. And one we were hoping to be able to manage with our current staffing, the one district nurse, but we've soon found that that would not happen. So we will be hiring through a contract service an additional nurse.
Great.
Dr. Blanchard, I have a question in regards to the contact tracing. We know that contact tracing is only as good as the information that is provided by the people who are contacted. Do we have any safeguards in place in regards to children who may be out of school and their families have elected to not get them tested, but they are showing signs and symptoms of COVID-19?
At this point, like my office hasn't had conversation about that. We do hear in the world of education that is a possibility. Ed Services, I want to just turn it right over to you. I don't know if you guys have heard anything or have thoughts on that in regards to maybe a student that is coming into our building that the family knows is displaying some of those signs and symptoms that they're encouraged to then stay home until those signs and symptoms are gone, and they're bringing them into the school building, and how are we to handle that?
So exactly like you referenced there, Dr. Blanchard, if a student is showing signs or symptoms that we're aware of, and according to the Macomb County Health Department guidelines, we do have a very extensive list of what those symptoms may be. And we have made those available to our families in the guideline or in the return to school packet. But we would ask, just like in any other situation with a student who is sick, for a family member to come and pick up that student and not return until there is either a break from those symptoms according to the guidelines given to us by the health department, or there is a physician that can indicate that perhaps it's just seasonal allergies, let's just say, and it's not anything more. But very similar to these procedures that we have in place already in our clinic. But of course, we may see more of this because the list of symptoms, obviously for COVID-19, are very similar to some other symptoms of common cold or seasonal allergies.
Sure, thank you. I have one more question about substitute teachers. Prior to the pandemic, we had an issue with substitutes. And usually the status quo was that a classroom may have 6 or 7 guest teachers over the course of a day because we couldn't find a sub. So people were taking their planning time to sub for that class. Would that practice still continue? Because then we would be exposing yet another individual into the bubble that we've created for these classrooms.
It may have to happen depending on the sub situation. Again, in a non-pandemic state, there is a sub shortage. So you're exactly right, Ms. Pite, in that in years past, when we were short subs, we utilized other teachers that were on their teaching prep to come in. And in some situations, that could be easily up to 6 different guest teachers throughout that day being in that one student's classroom. We're hoping to avoid that, but again, there is a sub shortage, and I anticipate that as schools start to come back, there will be an increase in staff having to be out of the buildings just through natural sickness, natural other issues that go on with life, let alone anything related to COVID-19. So yes, I do anticipate that we'll still have to utilize a similar format, and that does present a problem when it comes to, like you said, keeping that bubble intact. It presents a problem when you start, it adds to the complexity of contact tracing, again, allowing other people to be a direct contact if indeed that staff member turns out to be positive for COVID-19.
We did talk a little bit too about, adults coming into rooms and understanding the, kind of expectations and cleaning protocols that they would be expected to follow entering a room, not only to protect the kids in that classroom, but also to protect themselves. And so we talked about, being very conscientious about surfaces and what they're touching, about maintaining social distancing within any classroom, utilizing hand sanitizer at all times, and really making sure that we're reminding adults of their responsibilities as well.
Questions by the board?
I have another question. I just thought, will SACC be available to students on their days in school? And are we limiting enrollment, and when does that start?
Yes. Yeah, I can answer that. So yes, we will have SAC available to students on the days that they do attend school. So for a student who's in the A group, that would be Monday, Wednesday, and every other Friday. As soon as the Board of Education makes a decision, we will let our SAC directors know that they are to return to work and begin the preparations so that they can welcome students. We do need some time, however, for that preparation. So we could open SAC to our families starting on October 19th. And that would give us enough time for the SAC employees to first work with our district nurse to go over the plan that was created in the summer. That does follow the LARA guidelines. They are under the licensing and regulation guidelines of the state of Michigan. And then also to spend 2 more hours to receive additional training for our new registration system in SAC that's called Elio. Our SAC directors did get training in the spring, but the company has offered to give a 2-hour training to our SAC directors. So we have penciled in all of these dates, tentative, obviously based on what the board decides, but we are prepared as soon as tomorrow morning to deploy our SAC directors to the buildings as early as next week so that they have an opportunity to work with our district nurse, put their plans in place, and ensure that they understand the new system that we already had planned to roll out in September of this school year. Additionally, that will also give them time to understand who is signing up for SAC and make sure that they have enough aides in the SAC program to help support the number of students that will attend. So it will depend based on buildings. You do have some buildings that have a small number of students that attend SAC, and you have buildings that have a larger number. But in a hybrid plan, we understand we'll have half as many students, and SAC, because they are under the LARA guidelines, do have to adhere to the 1:18 ratio. So depending on the number of staff that they have available to work, that will depend on how many students they can receive in SAC. And that's why they ask parents to indicate ahead of time if they're going to be using the SAC service so that they can properly staff.
And that would be available for them to go into and request it as early as
the week of the 12th.
Okay.
The system will be up and running. However, parents need time. There's some registration information that you do have to complete per licensing and regulation. So it's very similar to our own registration process, but it has to be in that system so that our SAC directors have easy access to emergency information if ever there was a situation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Bednard and Mr. Roberts, if I may add one more thing about contact tracing. And I wanted to mention this earlier, and it escaped my mind. I just wanted to bring it up that, you know, when we talk about contact tracing and we start talking about the safety protocols, one of the things that we continue to remind our employees, and it will be equally as important for our students if the board does approve the motion for a hybrid return, that they are following the protocols and that they are being mindful of social spacing and distancing and facial coverings and washing their hands. Because if we cannot clearly identify contact tracing, if there's a positive case in one of our buildings and we cannot identify and clearly come up with who they were around, or if there are multiple positive cases as a result of that, the Macomb County Health Department will tell us that we have to quarantine the entire building. And these are things that we're experiencing, and there we can put the protocols in place, and we can have them listed, and we can put things in place. But if we let the human element not follow those protocols, it can have a detrimental effect whether or not we can remain open. And again, one of the things that and I'll speak for myself, we quickly fall back to who we are as people, and we like that interaction. And staying 6 feet distant from someone it's not normal when you're in conversation, not shaking their hand and not giving a hug. That's not typical behavior for us. So it will be so critically important that our staff and our students follow those protocols, because if not, the decisions of quarantining an entire building and class, they really do fall out of the district's hands. And that guidance will come from the health department. That determination comes from the health department, in which we'll have to follow. I just wanted to share that piece of information.
Okay, further questions from the board?
Sorry, I just have one to follow up on Adam's thing there. So, just 1 second. Sorry about that. So we're talking about contact tracing. How do we deal with that with these young kids? Because, you know, you ask them if they did something, they're going to think they're doing something wrong. And then maybe mine are the only ones that do this, but they might lie about what they did. I know they're not the only ones that do that, but how do we convey the message to the kids that, this is what you're supposed to do. If you accidentally don't do it, it's okay, but we need to know the truth. Like how is that going to get across to the kids so that we can try to do it accurately?
That sounds like a Marina question to me.
Of course, with contact tracing, obviously the first point of contact is going to be an adult. And you're going to start with the adult, whether that be the family member or the teacher that's with the student the majority of the school day. And that may put staff in an awkward position, but nonetheless, it's very important to be very clear with our district nurse and the Macomb County Health Department. And we're always going to err on the side of caution. If we're uncertain, then like Adam had referred to, there may be situations where an entire class is quarantined or an entire school building. And our hand is always guided by the health department. But as far as asking children to remember every detail, that's very difficult. They don't walk around with a stopwatch to know if they've been with somebody for more than 15 minutes. So we're very fortunate in our school district that all of our buildings have had the installation of brand new camera systems that make it very helpful if we have to contact trace and to see a situation kind of from a bird's eye view. But we will rely on the adults that are with the students the majority of the day to help communicate that information to our district nurse or the Macomb County Health Department.
Hey, Frank, I'm sorry I know I just thought of one more thing. We've had, many emails, and I don't know if you're going to be answering this, Marina, but in terms of air filters and airflow and what we may have done to create the best positive, environment with our airflow and our filters.
I will certainly default.
Scott's our guy on air filters.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Thanks, Marina.
Marina doesn't want to do air filters.
No.
So with the air filters, I believe it was either the last meeting or 2 meetings ago, the board approved the purchase to replace all air filters in all of our air handling units in our buildings. The air filters are based upon a MERV rating, which basically determines how much it can filter. The higher the MERV rating, the more particles it can filter. So we are following I think it's the CDC guidelines, and I believe OSHA requirements for not only the air exchange in the buildings, but also the MERV rating on the filters to make sure that all of our filters and all of our air exchange in all of our buildings either meet or exceed all requirements for the replacement of air in all of our facilities in all portions of our building.
The other thing that we have done, in addition to changing the air filters, is we've increased the air circulation through our air handlers, pulling more cool air in to increase airflow. It will impact our temperatures in our building, but it shouldn't impact it by a significant amount, 2 to 3 degrees plus or minus. But that is going to increase air circulation. So in addition to the air filters, that's already in place. We did that. We turned that air circulation up when we returned in August.
Mr. Bednard, I have 2 follow-up questions to that if Ms. Aquino is done. My first question is actually in regards to turning up the air circulation. It's my understanding that the CDC recommends that air circulation is turned over between 12,000 and 18,000 times. Do our air compressors have the ability to do that?
I can try and answer that. I don't know the 12 to 18,000 times. Does it say
per hour? Sorry, per hour.
Per hour. From my understanding, it's a much lower number than that. I thought it's 3 to 8 times, depending on the area and the size of the area that it is in. So if it's 18,000, that's way outside of what I've been exposed to and know. But everything that I've read says it's anywhere between 3 and 8 times an hour.
Well, if we've exchanged our air compressors since 2015, it should meet those guidelines.
Correct. Yep.
So I guess that's a better, easier question to answer.
Yes.
And a little less technical. Have we replaced all of our air compressors since 2015 to meet those standards?
All of the air compressors in all of our buildings, we have not replaced all of our air compressors in all of our buildings. The issue is the exchange of air and the units exchanging air based upon the CDC required amounts of time. And all of our units meet or exceed CDC guidelines for air exchange in all of our buildings. And again, the air exchange is dependent on what size of the space is and what type of space is being used, whether it's a classroom, a gymnasium, a cafeteria, a media center. They're all different air exchanges requirements.
Sure, thank you. And I think that this one is for Dr. Blanchard. Dr. Blanchard, in the event that we have people who have been instructed or do not answer the questions accurately as they are entering the building, what sort of consequence are we looking at?
So when you're talking about employees, part of it has been, the first part, while we haven't had students in, has been an educational part. And we've sent some clarification emails, and our district nurses helped me write those emails, making sure that they understand what they're reporting to. The first week when staff came back, our screener, we had many alerts on our screener. And just so people know, what happens is they fill out the screener, it's electronic, and it reports to me if there's an issue via email, myself and the district nurse and one other colleague in the human resources department. And we had an increase of those. And what was happening about that time was ragweed season. And so people were responding positively to some of those, what COVID signs and symptoms. So we've had to do some education around that. Now, if we know that someone has a fever, had a fever, and the next, that gets reported to us and they came to work and indeed they filled out the house screener that they did not, and later that day they had to go to the emergency room or go to the hospital, then we will handle that through the disciplinary process. We'll work with our association, but we will handle that through the disciplinary process. But my experience to this point, it really has been more of an education and really trying to help our staff really understand. If you have questions, call me, call our district nurse, and she's been wonderful. Has provided her cell phone. I guess the good news is we do have employees who want to be at work and they're wanting to come into the building and they're filling the screener out, and it's hold tight. If you are concerned, if you have a legitimate concern and you get prompted to stay put, just stay put. There's a number there for you to call and contact. And so we're really educating our staff members. Don't enter the building if you have a sign or symptom, but then there are signs and symptoms that may be allergy-like. So if you have allergies and are experiencing a scratchy throat, that doesn't necessarily mean you have a COVID symptom. So continue with the prompts and it will direct you down the right path. The screener we use is a dynamic screener, and depending on your response, we'll give a different prompt. And again, it'll eventually lead you to a go screen or a stop screen. And if it has a stop screen, it provides the number for our district nurse. So to answer your question about this discipline, yes, if we find someone that is going in and is definitely displaying signs and symptoms and was just ignoring that and came in anyway, we will handle that through a disciplinary procedure. But we're also doing an education piece to it as well, because we believe that's equally as important.
Thank you.
Mr. Bednar, can I also add a little bit more to my comment about the air exchange? I looked up the information, and a typical classroom is recommended that we exchange air 6 to 20 times per hour. And as it sits right now, the lowest amount that we exchange right now in a classroom is 7.5 times per hour. So we are well within that guideline. The other thing that we've also done is we've moved our outside air dampers from 10% to 20%, which is what they've recommended. And it means that we're bringing in 10% more fresh outside air to mix with the supply air going into the classrooms. So those are the two areas that we have looked at and reviewed with our engineering firms, and they have agreed that this is more than ample based upon the CDC guidelines.
Okay. Any other questions by the board? And if the board has questions that come up, perhaps while we're listening to the community comment, we will have the opportunity to again discuss this prior to voting. So, okay, with that, we will move on to our next item, which is from the community. Just a few things to preface beginning on that tonight. Again, Mr. Robertson explained. I would like to repeat also that Monday's meeting, we had an outage with 365, and because community could not listen into the meeting, we had to stop the meeting or we'd have been a violation of Open Meetings Act. So we were convening today. We changed our systems around to go to a Zoom model away from Teams for the board. We were able to kind of limit the background noise that was going on when folks were tuning in and having their mics on, which some of us forget too. Also, we can kind of cut that out. We went to community comment, more of a formal model where we ask you to sign up prior to the meeting to speak that evening to the meeting, and then we will direct you in from there. And that's kind of where we're at now. I believe Ms. Monia White is out there. We have 22 participants that signed up, I believe, this evening to speak. As always, before we begin taking community comment this evening, I'd like just to run through briefly the rules the board has for public participation in the meeting. So again, these are just comments that community members are able to make to the Board of Education this evening. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 5 minutes duration. And again, as you've seen in the past, we'll give you a 1 minute warning when you get close so you can kind of wrap things up. Participants shall direct all comments to the board and not to the staff or other participants. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually. Complaints against identifiable school personnel may not be expressed in an open meeting. Such complaints should first be submitted in writing to the board and aired in open or closed session according to the wish of the persons involved. As the presiding officer this evening, I have the ability to interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. I may request any individual to leave the meeting when that person does not observe reasonable decorum. May call for a recess or adjournment to another time when the lack of public decorum so interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting as to warrant such conduct. I also may waive these rules with the approval of the board when necessary for the protection of privacy or the administration of the board's business. So, okay, we're looking forward to the comments this evening from our community members. Ms. White, are we ready for our first participant?
We are. I'll be admitting participants one at a time, just so they're aware. And our first speaker tonight is Eleanor Coker. And just in terms of helping the community members be prepared, after Eleanor Coker will be Angela Gerard.
Okay, Mrs. Coker, thanks for joining us this evening and for signing up. Please share your comments with the board.
Mrs. Coker, it looks like you're muted. I believe it's *6 on the phone line to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello, Ms. Coker.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we sure can, Ms. Coker. Thanks for joining us this evening, and go ahead and share your comments with the board.
Thank you very much. I would like to begin by saying good evening to the Chippewa Valley board members and the administration and community. I would begin by thanking you for the time to share my family's concerns and suggestions regarding online learning versus in person. We have twins that are both seniors at Dakota. One is in the general education curriculum, while the other is in the creative learning program, also called CLP. The guidelines for the in-person learning requires a mask, and both of our children are unable to wear them for an extended period of time. Our daughter, who has had a history of migraines for several years, has tried over the summer by attempting a job, and unfortunately her migraines returned. She had difficulty breathing, and unfortunately, she did have to quit the job. As a result, our son as well, has breathing issues as well, and he's had them since the time of birth. We have tried over the summer to see if we could work through the use of the mask. It was very unsuccessful, unfortunately. He is also has a lot of sensory issues, which we feel will definitely impede his ability to focus on tasks and learn. He paces and hums quite a bit when he goes into a sensory overload as a result, and it becomes extremely magnified while wearing the mask. He will come right out and tell us, I can't breathe, I don't like this. He starts pulling at it. Therefore, we just can't have him wearing it for any period of time, if you will. Therefore, we have come up with a couple suggestions that we are hoping the board would consider with reference to the return to school plan. Suggestion number 1, if you would please consider the use of face shields in the place of masks when social distancing is not possible, making the education as accessible as possible for them. Number 2, or to please allow parents to sign a waiver, much like the one that is used for students who are not vaccinated. This would then help release the district of any liability, as it would be our choice to send them to school not wearing the mask for any extended length of time during the in-person learning. Again, as the type of waiver that is currently used with non-vaccinated students. We would also like to ask you to consider allowing the 21 graduates, the seniors, to return maybe within the first returning selected student groups because of the importance. I know it's important all over, but for our seniors to be able to get in, our daughter carries 4 AP classes, and that's a whole lot to be carrying at this time, as she's also in preparation for her SAT, which she takes on Saturday. They want badly to return to school for the in-person instruction. Our son's IEP and goals that are there are not able to be met as they should be with the virtual learning plan. There were also issues today. They had 2 where he was knocked out offline, I should say.
Mrs. Coker, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to say we have one more minute to go ahead and speak. So go ahead and continue for one more minute, please.
All right. Thank you so much. So, we'd like to try to keep it as close to his goals. I know it's difficult at this time. And with that, thank you very much for this time and the time that you were taking to hear all of us in the community this evening, and have a great evening.
Thank you so much for your comments this evening, Mrs. Coker. All right, Mrs. Monier White, who is the next community member that wants to speak to the board? Can you announce, please?
Our next speaker is Angela Gerard, and after that we have Frances McGee.
Okay, Mrs. Gerard, are you there? Mrs. Gerard? Hello, Mrs. Gerard, are you there?
Looks like she is here, but on mute. So again, I think *6 will unmute you on the phone.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
We do hear you, Mrs. Gerard. Thank you for joining us this evening, and please share your comments with the board.
Okay. Thank you so much for being so gracious to continue to let us speak out. I appreciate what Mr. Roberts is saying, that it's not easy to speak, and I can definitely attest to that, but desperate times call for desperate measures. For that reason, I decided to read what I'd like to say tonight. I really hope after hearing our emotion-filled feedback and intense challenges, you're inspired to vote yes to K-5 hybrid tonight. Just to quickly recap, the fully remote is not sustainable for the majority of our families. Special needs, large families, single parents, working parents are drowning. some even having to leave their jobs. Tech issues are constant, much like you have witnessed in your board meetings, but becomes unbearable day in and day out with no option to resume at a later date without being behind. I had 1 or 2 good days over the past almost 4 weeks and spent the others trying to resolve issues for hours. Feels unacceptable to find out our IT department was made up of 5 people starting fully remote, but a big thanks to them for all they tackle. Relieved to hear they are approved to hire more staff. Teachers are also regularly expressing frustration with this format and all its shortcomings. They too have lots of tech issues and spend half their time dealing with muting, unmuting, text box misuse, etc. Huge amount of gratitude for all their hard work too as they face the impossible. One of my children's teachers said she tried and wouldn't be able to teach a certain concept at all until they were back face to face. I continue to literally feel like a full-time unpaid employee of Chippewa Valley Schools, doing very little for 6 to 7 hours a day, but facilitating school for 5 kids, and it's incredibly draining and a huge strain on my family. I hope K-5 hybrid is just the first step, and you will be quick to be making plans for the 6th to 12th grade students to come back in some capacity. They too are struggling in many ways, even if they are not immediately visible. That being said, I think this plan is a decent starting point. When my son's teacher canceled 2 days of meetings due to an emergency, he showed instant relief not to be connected to a screen meeting all day. Having smaller in-person class sizes will also be beneficial for many reasons, and the 2 days off of meetings will be a healthier setup. On the days we aren't reaping the benefits of face-to-face, I believe we should have more flexibility as they work independently. And until they can stop the forced masking, I believe it's unfortunately just a swap of one unhealthy situation for another. 5 7-hour days is too long for young children to be masked. Which brings me to my next point. I implore you, if you have any control at all over it, please reconsider your mask wearing expectations, especially for younger children. I'm begging you to do your own research. Check oxygen levels under a child's mask. I have watched this myself, and the levels are subpar and can even be dangerous. I will tell you, the levels were not even to OSHA standards for any work environment. Many kids also develop severe mask rashes. Emmanuel, Lutheran, and Macomb has had no masks in the classroom with all students back 5 full days a week for over a month and has had no issue. I have personal friends who are medical doctors who have said unless you have a medical grade mask, it is worthless, and the general masking of society does more harm than good. I understand that the country is divided and there are intelligent people on both sides, and the public schools hands may be tied with our governor's excessive abuse of power. That is why I'm okay with complying to the best of our ability to get these kids back face to face, but ask you strongly consider no mask at the desk, remembering they are already social distance. Mask breaks, as Mr. Sibley mentioned, would also be helpful. Fear and anxiety are now the main drivers of policy, not this virus. Seems we are being conditioned to live in fear of the slightest risk of what if. Greater risks are presented in many other daily activities that we all partake in. Decisions should be based on severity of illness, not inflated number of positive cases. And these stats show extremely low to almost no chance of becoming seriously ill. The CDC just updated their case fatality rate posted on their site, and it's less lethal than the flu, even for 50 to 69-year-olds. We do none of this for the flu. 99.9% plus survival rate for 0 to 69-year-olds. Really seems we're focusing
I'm so sorry.
on the wrong.
Yeah, just 1 minute to wrap it up here. Thank
Okay.
you. Go ahead, please.
Okay. On the wrong numbers and putting our district kids at a disadvantage. One last suggestion I'd like to make is signing a waiver relieving the school district from responsibility for our children and families' physical health and liability for possibly contracting the virus from the school. We have researched and know our risks and wholeheartedly believe the benefits outweigh the risks for face-to-face. No one could love our kids more than we do. Also continuing to have trouble comprehending why any parents pushing virtual should be allowed a voice at this time. Not here to judge them for their reasons, but they were given a virtual option from the beginning while the rest of us had our choice taken from us. Thank you again for all you do. I plead with you all to dig deep for the truth in a world where truth is hard to find, and stand for what's right, even if it's not easy and unpopular. Be the district to make a difference. Our struggling families, students, and teachers are counting on you. This is not working, and we can do better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gerard, for your comments this evening. Ms. Monia White, our next parent.
Frances McGee was next on the list, but I'm not seeing her in the lobby. So following that is Sarah Broderick. Go ahead and admit her.
Okay. How do you say that last name, Mrs. White?
I believe it's Broderick.
Roderick. Okay.
Ms. Broderick, if you're there, *6 should unmute you. You've been admitted to the meeting.
Hi, and
Ms. Broderick, welcome to the board meeting. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. Please share your comments with the board.
okay, thank you for having me.
Go ahead, Ms. Broderick.
I'm sorry, I muted my own self. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I had a whole statement to present here for you guys, but you guys have touched on quite a bit of it. I guess my biggest question or concern lies with the fact that most of this meeting has been focused on cleaning and sanitizing and air filters and masks and how are they going to be punished and everything. My concern more is how are they going to get a quality full education when they're only getting half the face time with their teachers. I am all for our schools. I'm all for 100% face-to-face. I want them back in any capacity that I can get them there at this point. And I do understand that there is a lot of wheels turning here. But is a full year's worth of education. They're only there 2 to 3 days a week with supplemental material coming home in between. As a former teacher, I know, and I know all of you know, that it is pretty impossible to cover a full year's worth of education in half the time. So I guess those are where my concerns lie. I don't know why we can't look into some sort of live streaming, Teams meetings, whatever, for the kids who are at home so that they are all on the same page at the same time. And I also am very concerned about the fact that the 6th to 12th graders are at this point being completely left out of these plans. I have a middle schooler and a high schooler who I watch daily struggle with sitting by themselves in their rooms and, you know, having lunch alone. And the only kind of communication they have with their friends is another screen. And that's just seems pretty unacceptable to me. So I'm hoping that that plan will get rolled out as quickly as possible. And I would.
Yep. Check your mute again, Ms. Broderick.
Love Pete. I'm so sorry.
Okay, go ahead. Yes.
I don't know where I was or what you heard, but I guess I just would really like for someone to help me out with how these kids are going to get a whole year's worth of education in 2 or 3 days a week, and how quickly are the 6th to 12th graders going to be put back into the schools where they really need to be. I know these are hard decisions. I know there's not a one-size-fits-all fix, and I respect and appreciate what's going on there now. But I'm really hoping that somebody could shed a little light on that for me so I can feel better about it. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much for your comments this evening, Ms. Broderick. Okay, Ms. Monia White, our next parent.
Yes. So our next speaker is Maria Louisa. I will go ahead and admit her, and then following that is Gretchen Vermiglio.
Hello, Ms. Louisa. Ms. Louisa? Is she on?
You're in the meeting. Maybe try a *6 to unmute yourself.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Louisa, we hear you very good. Thanks for joining us this evening, and please share your comments with the board.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to start off by saying good morning or good evening to everyone. Okay, so I have 2 kids. My 6-year-old is in 1st grade and my 4-year-old is in preschool. My 6-year-old goes to Fox Elementary. My 6-year-old has an IEP and he has to be in school full time to receive the help he needs. When he is in school, he's very cooperative and listens. Right now, he is in the comfort of his own home, not wanting to do school. He wants to play.
he is not putting in the effort as he should, as if he would be in school. Not being in school, I think the Chippewa Valley School District is failing not only my son, but my other kids too. The quick decision you had made back in August was the biggest mistake in history. You asked the parents to vote on face-to-face or virtual, and most of us chose face-to-face. Some parents whose kids are in our district had to take them out and register them to a different school and district just because they know their child does best face-to-face. Had you decided to start the school year as hybrid, we wouldn't be so hellbent about this. You took away our voice and our decision on what's best for our kids. You have created more stress to not only to us parents, but to our innocent kids. Their mentality has taken a huge toll. They need their full-time school routine and normalcy back. Many kids, including mine, are crying and wondering why other schools are face-to-face full-time and we are not. This isn't fair to our kids, and this isn't normal or healthy. Please make the decision to have the kids go back to school full-time and not hybrid, because frankly, hybrid is just not going to work out for me and probably some other parents as well. If there are other districts and private schools who are full-time with kids who wear a mask in the hallways and such, we can do the same. Besides, Governor Whitmer just signed that all students K-12 must wear masks starting this coming Monday. And I think the kids will do very well. I think it'll be harder on us parents than it would be on the kids. Also, now since you had a taste of your own medicine on Monday from Microsoft from not cooperating, this is how us parents deal with the computers on the daily. When we are logged in, half the class's cameras don't work. Some of us cannot log in at all. This has become a complete nightmare on our end. If we had to vote between face-to-face full-time or hybrid, I would definitely be team full-time. And this is just what's best for my kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Casey, for your comments. Okay, Ms. Monier White, another parent, please, or participant.
Absolutely. Gretchen Vermiglio is next, and following Mrs. Vermiglio, we have Doreen Sana. Mrs. Vermiglio, it looks like you're in the meeting and unmuted.
My name is Gretchen Vermiglio, and I would just like to say that I have been a member of the Chippewa Valley community since 1987. I had 4 children go through the district K-12. I have 3 grandchildren currently in the district, 1 at each level, and I am an 18-year retired teacher, principally from Dakota. I think your hybrid plan sounds like you have done an amazing amount of work on it, and you've tried to cover every angle. But what concerns me is that as a teacher, when someone says to me the kid needs enrichment activities, and the child possibly hasn't been in class since Wednesday, and on Thursday and Friday he's going to have enrichment activities, that puts the onus of those teachers to come up with enrichment activities, translated worksheets. I think that a live stream of the teacher teaching in the classroom would keep everybody on the same page, okay, and that it would require the teachers to not be working their butts off every day of the week. Also, the high school plan, which I have not heard yet, it seems to me that there is all those amazing career and technical education opportunities in those high schools, and I might be a little prejudiced because I taught CTE for 17 years, 18 years. Okay, but they're missing those. Those can't be replaced hybrid. You can't go into that giant building behind Dakota and build a house when you're doing it from a computer. We are doing a disservice to our children if we don't bring them back into the classroom. Okay, if we talk about Maslow, which we have anybody who's been in a teacher education class learned about Maslow's hierarchy. Number 3 on that hierarchy is belonging. They're not belonging anywhere at this point. And number 4 on that hierarchy is self-esteem. They can't get self-esteem if they don't feel like they belong. I am of the generation or the age group or the whatever of everybody who is telling me you're going to get COVID, you're going to die from it, you're going to get more ill than anybody else. I understand the risks of this virus, but I also understand what we're doing to these kids. They don't have a structure. They don't have any belonging, and they don't have a teacher who can read their faces and say, oh my God, he gets it. And that is so important to students. Okay, so I implore you to please consider the hybrid model, or if not, completely face-to-face. And I can tell you, as a retired person, any day of the week, I can walk through my subdivision, which is not far from Dakota, or I can go to Partridge Creek, or I can go to Target, and I will see middle to high school students when they're supposed to be in virtual school, wandering the streets, riding their bikes, riding their skateboards, whatever, during the school week. So there's a lot of kids that are being lost. They're just not doing it. And I've seen my own grandchildren in tears. I've seen my daughter and son-in-law in tears. It's not worth it. This virus is not going anywhere. It's going to be around for a while, and it's time for us to deal with it and say what is good for kids, because this virtual learning is not good for every kid. So thank you so much for listening to me. Have a great evening.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Vermiglio. Okay, Ms. Monia-White, our next parent.
Ms. Sana is next on the list, but I'm not seeing her in the lobby, so we can move on to Carly Miller. I've just admitted you to the meeting if you want to go ahead and unmute.
Thank you so much. Hello, Ms. Miller.
Have a great evening.
Hi, please.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Please address the board.
Okay. Hi. I appreciate you taking the time to let the community speak. And I honestly commend every one of you for the amount of work that you put forth towards this return. The most important thing to me is a safe return to school. And honestly, the teachers have done a phenomenal job teaching our children virtually. I have a child that is in elementary and then a child that is in middle school currently. A little bit about my background: I'm a nurse practitioner, have been a nurse and a nurse practitioner for over 20 years. I also teach in higher education and practice for athletics as an NP. I do have a good background in science, obviously, and understand epidemiology. My concern is, what is the criteria for a safe return? I inquired about this at the very beginning before we made the decision between hybrid and virtual. I really didn't get a clear answer on it. So in a sense, when I look at the data basically shows that back in August, yes, we were very, very high. Our numbers of cases were up in the 80s, per million, the average. Our positivity rate was up at 7. When I look at it now, you have to look at trends. You have to look at trends over time. You can't pick one day and say, oh, our positivity rate is at 4 today. You have to look at a period of time and make sure that those numbers are trending down, meaning we're at 5 right now. I just looked at the data today. We're currently at 5% positivity. Our cases per million are close to 70. That is not much different than where we were in August. So my concern is obviously related to that. So why is it different now that we're going to be sending them back as it was in August? I do understand everybody's unique needs and challenges with their children, but I do feel that this is probably one of the worst times to bring kids back during flu season, when respiratory viruses are more prevalent. My other question too is, I guess when you look at all of the details that are involved in terms of quarantining and contact tracing, there's so many things that come up just from personal experience because of higher education and trying to plan and bring people back and students back. There's so many factors, I think, that are not even really understood by a lot of people that will come up. If you let your guard down, one little thing, it will just balloon. And unfortunately, we don't know a lot about this virus. That's the other thing. As a clinician, we don't have that data. We don't have good data on long-term outcomes. We're finding in student athletes that they have risk for myocarditis, inflammation of the heart. That is even in asymptomatic students. So really, I implore you to actually look at the science and have the safe return guided by medical experts. That's where all these guidelines come from. Wearing masks, social distancing is guided from medical experts that can read and interpret research, not because of politics and who wants to fight about this or that. It's basically founded from science. Everything, even our governor, everybody may be mad about it, but really it's directed from scientists and researchers. So really, I think my concern is what data are you using to bring our children back? If this data, if I see cases that, up in the 70s, that is not different than it was in August. So my concern is, when are they bringing them back? And if we start to rise even higher, when are they going to be stopping or basically going back to virtual? From personal experience, my kids have done well. I have had a phenomenal experience with online virtual learning. And I really wanted to, bring this up from a clinician's perspective, essentially, and with my background as a nurse. Being on a front line and being a frontline provider, I have seen it. My family is frontline providers in the hospital. We have seen it. It's not good. I will promise you that. It's not good. And we don't have the data really behind, children and what the long-term effects are. And there's a lot of unknowns here.
Okay, Ms. Miller, I just want to give you that 1
Yep.
minute to wrap it up.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. So, and I even like what was brought up in this meeting, things like reverse teaching. There's so many little things. One little thing it just sets you back. There's so many details that are involved, and I think you're all well aware of that. But my concern is who is making this decision and what evidence are they basing it on in terms of science? So that was my question, essentially, or my concerns with this. And going back to like Maslow hierarchy of needs, number one is physiologic needs. If we don't keep our children safe and healthy, they won't meet those other criteria, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So number one is physiology and physiologic needs and keeping them safe and healthy. So thank you for taking your time, and I appreciate it. I just wanted to essentially put my concerns and my voice out there.
Great. Thank you so much for your comments, Ms. Miller. Okay, Ms.
Thank you.
Minor White, let's have the next parent, please, or next community participant.
Melissa Rice is next on the list, but I'm not seeing her in the lobby. So the next speaker will be Robin Panacea. I apologize if I said that incorrectly. I'll go ahead and admit you though. And again, a *6 should help you unmute.
Ms. Panacea? Hello, Ms. Panacea?
Hello.
Hello, please.
Hi.
With the board this evening.
Hi. I'm sorry, my YouTube is seems to be delayed.
Well,
So
Yep.
I can hear you all just fine. Anyways, I just want to say thanks to the teachers, administration, and the board for their efforts in trying to attempt to satisfy the masses. I mean, there's two sides of the coin here, and no one's going to be perfectly happy, but I would like to encourage you to vote for this return to school. There's several concerns with this remote learning, for instance, why books were not even delivered until 9 days after the first day of school at the high school. Laptops are still not fully distributed. I am a physician of 20 years experience, and I have had this conversation hundreds of times since March that no activity is going to be 100% safe, but we need to remember that there's risks and benefits, and it's more than just the disease numbers that we're dealing with here. I heard several parents talking about masks and looking for exemptions to masks. I will tell you that there is very little reason why masks should be excluded. Most people should be able to tolerate them just fine. And to be completely honest with you, if you feel you cannot wear a mask for various diseases, then you are probably a higher risk person that should be doing virtual learning and not in-person learning. That's it for me, and thanks for your time.
Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate your comments this evening. Okay, Ms. Minor White, our next community participant, please.
The next several speakers on the list for the board members who are following are not in the lobby. Dave Cooper, Fierce Ashley, Jessica Strong, and Anna Korkaki, I don't see. So the next person we have available is Bridgette Blackwell. I'll go ahead and admit her.
Okay, Ms. Blackwell?
I think it does take a couple seconds to catch up if they're watching the live stream.
Okay, Ms. Blackwell.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, Ms. Blackwell. We hear you very well. Please address the board.
Okay. Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts this evening. I'm an elementary science teacher in the district, but I'm also a wife, a mother, and a grandmother. I am concerned for the safety and well-being of my family, as well as the children and families of the entire Chippewa community. I know it hasn't been easy for our students working remotely from home. I've witnessed firsthand the issues experienced by students, families, and teachers, but it is improving. The children have become comfortable with the format, and there are fewer technology issues. Our tech department has been working tirelessly since March to make things right for all of us. Believe it or not, remote instruction is working, and most importantly, it is safe. There are some who believe it's time for students to return to the classroom, and I can assure you there is nothing teachers want more. However, there are many factors to consider, and I urge everyone to weigh the pros and cons before making up their minds. Overall, currently the health and safety of our students, staff, and community must be our #1 priority. The state of Michigan currently is experiencing another surge in cases. Macomb County is still third, behind only Wayne and Oakland. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, Michigan has a total of 14,770 COVID cases in children. The CDC has also reported 935 cases in the United States of multi-systems inflammatory syndrome. This is a serious illness some children develop about 2 weeks after being infected with the virus. Michigan has reported almost 30 cases of this illness. Our children are not safe from this virus. Children can and do get COVID-19. Some children become very ill, but many do remain asymptomatic, which is great for that child, but it is dangerous for the people they come in contact with. We must also remember we're opening the elementary. Think about an elementary child. They can't stay away from one another. They're not going to keep their masks on. They're going to want to trade their masks with one another. The safety procedures for lunch is concerning as well. Sitting every other seat at the lunch table is less than 6 feet apart, and they will not have their masks on. Another concern is our custodial help. How are they going to clean the lunchroom and the playground during lunch and recess? At this time, we only have one daytime custodian. Another issue, specialist teachers. We will be going to 5 different classrooms every day and being exposed to many children each week. And in turn, those students will be exposed to us. Quality of instruction is another huge factor. Currently, the remote learning model provides our students with direct instruction 5 days a week. We all know that the hybrid model is going to cut that down to 2 days face-to-face, 2 days at home. This is going to, and the children that are going to be in the remote learning, the CVVA, they are still going to have the 5 days of instruction. This is going to present an inequity in our instructional delivery. There are active COVID cases in neighboring districts as well as in our own. We know that one of our schools was closed this week, and the kids have not even returned to the buildings.
Ms. Blackwell, I'm sorry.
We began school on September 8th, and we must review our plan every 30 days, so we still have time to decide. It's easy to jump to conclusions and make a hasty decision. It is difficult to sit back, assess a situation logically, and make an informed decision.
Hi, Ms. Blackwell.
I believe.
Hello, Ms.
I believe.
I'm so sorry.
I've got 1 minute left, I think.
Yes, please. I just want to remind you.
I believe our Chippewa Valley community members trust Chippewa to provide a challenging education in a safe environment. I urge everyone to continue to have faith in the administrators and our Board of Education. They made the correct decision to open remotely, At this time, we need to continue to provide instruction remotely until it is truly safe for our students to return. Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you so much, Ms. Blackwell, for your comments this evening. Okay, Ms. Monia White, our next parent, please.
The next parent is Richard Werner, and he'll be followed by Andrea Biondo.
All right.
Mr. Werner, I just admitted you to the meeting if you want to go ahead and unmute.
Hello, Mr. Werner.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Werner. Yes, we can hear you. Thanks for being with us this evening, and please address the board.
Okay. Well, I have a great big letter here that I actually wrote, but it seems like a lot of the stuff has already been addressed in the meeting tonight as far as what's going on. I'm sorry, say that again. Oh, there's a delay between my computer and my phone. Sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. So go ahead and speak.
Okay. So I have concern with sending my kids back to school in the in-person, including the hybrid, just because it is a high-risk environment. As it's been mentioned by multiple parents before, sending the kids into the school does seem a little bit risky at this time, in that it is getting to flu season and kids have a hard time keeping themselves from not touching anything or touching the floor or touching whatever. And I just don't think the staffing is there at this time to appropriately take care of that. I also have concerns about my 10-year-old who does have an IEP. He also has ADD, autism, anxiety, and asthma. And one of the things that's coming up between both him and his brother, who also has breathing problems, is, again, the whole mask wearing thing, even though they are social distancing. So we do have concerns about that, and then the consequences and getting in trouble or being talked to or feeling like they're doing something wrong because they're having trouble breathing. So I wanted to let the board know of that, about that. My one son does want to go back to school. He is, motivated about it, but he's worried about getting in trouble. And he also is having a hard time wearing the mask full time. And with everything else going on, we're doing the board meeting tonight virtually. There's as you already mentioned earlier, that the Clinton Valley had a staff member test positive yesterday, which is kind of weird because there's no kids in the building. So that showed up a concern as well, that was just a handful of people, however many were there. And now you're introducing, even if it is the A and B, 15 out of 30 kids at a time, you're increasing the likelihood of this COVID spreading. There was a recent retirement party held outside the administration building. And again, everybody was there social distancing. So I see all this stuff going on where it's being done virtual social distancing. And that's not very reassuring that it's okay to send the kids back into school the way it currently is and what's going on. And as a couple other people have alluded to, the cases are still there. There's still a lot of people testing positive. Obviously, the rates are kind of steady, but they are what they are. I understand the need for in-person learning. We thought it was a good idea to get going, but right now, both of them seem to be doing very well in the online virtual setting. And even if we did want to continue that, it sounds like a full-time virtual, there's no openings available until, our first part of December or even January. So I did have an idea that was already brought up previously, is like a live streaming option for those parents that are still concerned with sending, their kids back, even if it is 2 days a week or 3 days, depending on the alternating days. Is it possible for live streaming to strongly be considered for the parents that are on the fence with sending the kids back? As another parent mentioned also, there is an IEP in place for my one son, and a lot of those aren't being met. We could even have the IEP meeting in person because of social distancing and all that, which again shows there's some concern with getting everybody in the same room, even if it is a small group of, say.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to give that one.
No.
Sorry to interrupt. So go ahead.
Appreciate that. No problem, sir. Is the IEP, and even that was not able to happen in person with only, a handful of people, 10 people here. We're not talking 15 with the students. So I know this may go against the grain, but I have some concerns sending the kids back. I don't think it's the right time to do this. I think more time needs to be considered about staying virtual. I know it's a burden. It's put a strain on some of the things around here as well. But sending them in person sounds like it's a high risk situation right now. So thank you for what you're doing. I know you're working tirelessly trying to come up with what's the best for everybody. And thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Warner, for joining us this evening and for your comments. Okay, Ms. Monier White, Ms. Biondo, I think you said?
Yes, we have Andrea Biondo, and she'll be followed by Jacqueline Fleury and Lisa Radu.
Hi, Ms. Biondo? Hello, Ms. Biondo? Hello, Ms. Biondo?
Hello?
Hello, Ms. Biondo. This is Mr. Bednard. We hear you loud and clear. Please address the board this evening.
Hi. Just wanted to say thank you for letting me speak. I have some issues that concern me. And I know the issues that I'm about to address are kind of controversial, but they need to be talked about. They need to be discussed because I'm genuinely concerned about them. And what I want to talk about is the use of face masks all day long for children. So, my child will not be wearing a face mask during school. No government agency, school board, principal, or teacher has any authority to restrict my child's oxygen all throughout the day. These masks are dangerous, and all-day use can cause staph infections, lung infections, hypoxemia, and mild cases of hypoxemia can cause shortness of breath and headaches. Severe cases can also interfere with the heart and brain function. I would think that in school, children would need a full functioning brain for the day. Will there be any PPE and medical experts available to monitor my child's oxygen levels? Who can I trust to make sure my child is safe and not suffering in silence because his nose and mouth are covered? Is this something that you all would want to be liable for? My child has a minor speech impairment and needs a full use of his mouth and tongue. A mask will make it worse, physically and psychologically. You seem to care more about the liability of COVID, which is turning out to be a bad cold, than the liability of the damage caused by restricting oxygen to young, healthy people. There seems to be no risk of COVID in schools, or the majority of the population for that matter. The infection fatality rate is staring us all in the face, and you have to ask yourself, why are we going to all these extreme measures? For ages 0 to 19, 0.0003%, ages 20 to 49, 0.0002%, ages 50 to 69, 0.005%, and 70 and above, 0.054%. And all this info is from the cdc.gov. The real pandemic are the political tyrants who are using a virus to control our lives. Our children are being used as political pawns right now, and all of you seem to be playing along. It's dangerous, disgusting, and disturbing. I'm nervous for the future of this generation and what it's going to do to all of them. I do, however, want my child in school. He's a very social person, and virtual has been tough on him. And perhaps by mid-November, all the political theater will ease up. But if you do open sooner than expected, I beg you to please not enforce these tyrannical mask guidelines and give the students and staff the right to breathe and make their choices however they feel on this matter, because one size does not fit all. And that's what I wrote, and that's what I wanted to get across this evening.
Okay, Ms. Bianovi, thank you so much for your comments this evening. All right.
Yep. Thank you for having me, and have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. You too also. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Ms. Monier White.
The next community member is Lisa Radu. I just entered you into the meeting if you'd like to unmute.
Hello, Ms. Radio. Hello, Ms. Radio. Hello, Ms. Radio. Ms. White, she's showing on?
She's in the meeting, but she's showing as muted. I could admit the next person and we could come back to Ms. Radio.
Ms. Radio? Okay, why don't we come back to Ms. Radio?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Board members, you have Jay Gibbons on your list. She emailed me saying she is not requesting to speak any longer. So Anna Nooner is our next parent or our next community member to speak. And again, I just added you to the meeting.
Okay, we'll give her a second. Hello, Ms. Nooner.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak. So I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead,
One
please.
being, if we are looking to opening hybrid, have we reached out to any of the private schools that have been successful, that have been back for a month and are not either reporting or don't have any cases of COVID? What have they done to be successful? I understand they have smaller class sizes, but it can still be there if that's where we're concerned with even doing hybrid, that the kids can still contract it, in the smaller classes. So what have they been doing that has made them successful? I don't know if anybody's reached out or not. My other concern is if we do go ahead and do this hybrid and make it effective October 12th, when will we be reevaluating about extending it to either the upper grades or even adding on more days in the for the elementary, for the future? Is it only going to be every 30 days and then there's another 2-week lag? Because if that's the case, then we're talking 6 weeks reevaluation, which is a lot of lost opportunities for learning for the young grades. Mask-wise, these kids can wear masks. I have a second grader who's 7 who goes to tutoring and wears a mask for an hour multiple times a week, and they can be taught to wear them if we reinforce it with them and educate them on why, and spend that first few days of school telling them why. Just as parents, we should have been doing it all along. It can be very beneficial to them. And lastly, these middle school and high schoolers that are not going in, they are not social distancing at home. They are going out with their friends. They are seeing each other, most of them regularly. So, being afraid to bring them back into a school setting, we have to know that they're being, hanging out with their friends and they're going to activities, just to think about that as well. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Okay, Ms. Monier White, our next community participant, please.
Do we want to check in with Lisa Radu? Or
We can do that. Ms. Radu, are you out there, Ms. Radu?
okay, then next up is Natalie Gall. Go ahead and add her to the meeting.
Hello, Mrs. Gall.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Gall, we can hear you perfectly fine. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Perfect.
Please share your comments with the board.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I wanted to start by saying I have 3 daughters in the district. I have a 3rd, 5th grader at Shawnee and a 7th grader at Seneca. I want to say after the announcement of the kids starting the year on a virtual platform, I truly was the most concerned about their mental health. I knew that the academics wouldn't be where the private schools were when they would be opening, and now the other public schools who have been able to open face-to-face, but I wanted to give Chippewa Valley a chance because we truly love our teachers and our schools. My 2 older girls are excellent students who love school. They made the best of the situation in spring and have given a valiant effort since the school year has started, but they beg to go back every day. Socially and academically, it truly is affecting them. My third grader, who I'm going to name in hopes that maybe you can relate a little more, is Samantha, my little lover, Samantha. Samantha is 9 years old, and like I said, is in third grade. Samantha struggles emotionally with anxiety and academically with reading. When a child with anxiety is struggling with schooling at home and they're looking to their teacher through a computer screen wanting help, they obviously are not getting anywhere near the kind of help that they would be getting face-to-face. I know her teacher, I know her well. My other girls have had her and we love her, but she can't get through to Samantha the way she needs to through the screen. Today, it took my little girl close to 5 hours to complete the reading portion of the NWEA. 5 hours of testing for a 9-year-old. It was a very frustrating 5 hours for my sweet little girl. She was crying, calling herself stupid, an idiot, and begging to stop going to school. I can't tell you how many times I said, "I'm so sorry, honey. I can't help you, honey. Just give it your best shot today. It's no big deal." This is not her temperament. This is not her attitude in our normal life. She loves going to school. She loves making her teachers happy, but obviously she has hit her breaking point. I know I am not alone in this. I know there are children of all ages and parents who are dealing with this exact same situation. The kids not struggling enough for an IEP and are not at a special education level are truly getting lost. I am a mom who is doing my best and failing miserably with helping my own child. I cannot give her the tools to succeed with what I have to offer. I know she needs more help, and I can't even get the opportunity to have her evaluated to figure out what we can do to help her. Again, I know I'm not alone. So I am speaking for all age kids. I'm speaking for the parents, the step-parents, the grandparents, the guardians, and the babysitters who feel like they aren't enough for their struggling children. I understand that this vote's for elementary tonight, but I know that the kids are struggling at all levels. All age kids need to be back and need to be back full time. The only way any of these kids are going to be able to succeed is being in school with teachers who know what to do for them. I also sub in the district, as I have the last few years. I wanted to add, you will probably have many more subs in the schools if our kids are in full time, so we don't have to be home supporting them in a hybrid or virtual model. I was hoping I'd be able to be on a video stream tonight and bring my girls in to see you. Instead, I will say this. Look at how small all the pictures of your counterparts are on the screen right now. I'll just pause while everyone looks up. You're in your office or your room, looking down, checking your text messages, and you have distractions. This is exactly what you're expecting of our kids, ages 5 to 18. How can they focus, learn, and get to know their teachers, and their teachers expected to teach and get to know them? How is this the best for any of our children, any age, elementary, middle, or high school? I'd wanted to end it there, and I know this will probably ruffle some feathers, but the special teacher who talked previously and the gentleman who followed had the choice to go to the virtual academy. We cannot all be expected to keep our children home because they aren't happy with their choice. We have had plenty of time to get things ready, and it sounds like our administration is working their tails off to get the schools prepared for face-to-face. And I appreciate that, and I thank you for your time, and I hope you guys want to get our kids back to school. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments this evening, Mrs. Gall. Okay, Ms. Monier White, do we have another parent
I want to get our kids back.
that wanted to speak this evening?
We do. We have Melissa Rice.
Okay. Mrs. Rice? Hello, Ms. Rice?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you perfectly fine. Please, thanks for being here, and please address the board this evening.
I just want to say these kids need to go back. I have my 63-year-old mother at home with my children throughout the day. I had a choice of getting health insurance for my family and keeping a job or staying home. And well, I had to choose health insurance for my children and myself and my husband. Every day it's been a struggle. There have been technical issues every day. The teachers have yelled at these children because they're frustrated with it. It's got to end. These kids need to go back. Their mental health has diminished. I don't know if anyone on the board has a kindergartner, but to virtually teach a kindergartner, it's not going to happen. They're making faces, they're throwing food and catching it in their mouth. They can't stay in their seat. All I have to say is, please vote. Let's get these kids back into the classroom. They need it. The parents need it. The families need it. The education clearly isn't essential. I think it's essential, but there's family of mine that left Chippewa Valley, that mom and dad are in the hospital and on the front line. They left Chippewa Valley and they went to private school because private schools are open. They don't wear a mask. Out in Ira Township, the students don't wear masks. They wear a mask if they're leaving their desk, and that is it. If they're up from the desk, they put a mask on. If they're sitting at their desk, they are allowed to take their mask off. Kids have health problems with asthma. They can't wear a mask all day. But I'm 100% all for getting these kids back to school. Both of my children have had, in the last 3-4 weeks of school, 6 hours total of learning because there's technical issues left and right. You guys, let's please get these kids back into the classroom. And that's it.
Okay, Ms. Thanks so much for joining us this evening and sharing your comments with the Board of Education.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Leonard White, we have another parent.
We only have one registered parent left, and that's Lisa Radu. It looks like she left and came back, so hopefully we'll be able to get her on this time.
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, Ms. Radu. We can hear you perfectly fine. Thanks for joining us this evening. And go ahead and please share your comments with the board.
Thank you so much for having me. I totally appreciate it. Sorry about the whatever hiccup I hit a little bit ago. Once again, thank you for having me. I would just like to kind of piggyback on way back of what caller number 2 and caller number 3 had said, and also what Dr. Robin Panacea also had to say. I don't understand why the middle school and the high school can't go back at the same time as the elementary kids. I am all for 100% face-to-face. I think these kids need to be back at school. I am hearing about platform issues every single day with remote learning. And if I can quote what Dr. Ron Roberts said earlier this evening, he is ready to go, quote unquote, by October 12th. I also would like to share a concern of one of the other earlier callers had mentioned about statistics in the state of Michigan. If you look at the COVID website for the state of Michigan, there are only 5 children under the age of 18 hospitalized with COVID right now. Once again, there's only 5 patients under the age of 18 hospitalized with COVID-19 right now. One other statistic I can share with you, according to the state of Michigan COVID site, there are only 1.9% of all the hospital beds in Michigan are being occupied with COVID patients. So I would like you to understand that statistic. We are not spiking. We are very flat as far as the curve is concerned. For the well-being, mentally, physically, for these children, they need to be back in school. Wearing masks, I have no problem with that. But I honestly 100% wholeheartedly believe we really need to get these kids back in school. So like I said, caller number 2, number 3, and Dr. Robin kind of reiterated everything I wanted to say. And thank you so much for all you're doing and all the teachers are doing. And everyone have a good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your comments tonight, Ms. Radu. Okay.
Mr. Bednard, I apologize. There is one more parent in the lobby who is registered. We spoke earlier. I didn't think she was going to speak tonight, but I think I should let her in just to make sure.
Absolutely.
She didn't change her mind. So
what's her name?
This is Sandra Girardi.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you change your mind and want to speak tonight, please feel free to unmute.
Hello, Ms. Girardi.
If you change your mind and want to speak tonight,
hello, Ms.
feel free
Girardi.
to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you perfectly fine this evening. Thanks for joining us, and please share your comments.
Hi. I wanted to let everyone know that we appreciate all your time. Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you perfectly fine this evening. Thanks for joining us, and please share your comments.
Hi. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm delayed.
That's
I
okay.
basically
go ahead
just
and
wanted
speak.
to express my concern about the security on the passwords for the kids on the computer system. My daughter she just turned 11, and someone went on her bio and changed it and wrote something really vulgar. So I just wanted the board to make sure that they keep notice with the IT department or whoever runs all the computer systems that the kids are safe that way, because I'm a little worried about cyberbullying. But I think the computer assignments and everything with the teachers is starting to smooth out. So that's all I had. I just wanted to make sure my concern was addressed. Computer assignments and everything with the teachers is starting to smooth out. So that's all I had. I just wanted to make sure my...
Okay, Mr. Girardi, thank you so much for joining us this evening and for your comments to the board. Ms. Monia White, is that all the parents that signed up for this evening that are on the call?
That is correct.
Okay, well, we're going to end community comment at that point then. We want to thank again all the parents for joining us and for sharing their thoughts and for sharing thoughts for so many of our community members out there. I'm sure share many of those thoughts, and it's always great, and we appreciate to be able to hear those thoughts, especially in front of such an important vote in our community. Okay. And I also want to also mention before we move on that our next board meeting will be this Monday. And again, our community portion now for comment is something you sign up for. You can get that on the website where the board meeting link is. Also, there will be a link for directions to sign up. If you have any questions, you can call the district at 723-2000 and we'll direct you to Ms. White or Ms. Adlam, who will be taking those sign up lists. Okay, and usually it ends 1.5 hour before. It will be ending 1.5 hour before the board meeting start. This coming Monday, the board meeting will be at 6:30, so that would mean a 6 o'clock cutoff for our community comment participants for Monday. But thank you again. Okay, we will move on at this time to general consent agenda. And we have a motion to pass the general consent agenda. And please say your name too, because I don't have everybody's face on my screen.
This is Jill. I'll move.
Moved by Ms. Pyden.
No, Jill Zek.
I'm sorry. Moved by Mr. Mink-Zek.
Ms. Pyden will second.
Okay, thank you. Second by Ms. Pyden. Anything on the general consent agenda this evening that a board member would like to comment on, have removed? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote?
Ms. Domingue-Zak.
Yes.
Ms. Pyden.
Yes.
Ms. Aquino.
Yes.
Mr. Badnard.
Yes.
Cardamone, yes. Mr. Patzert.
Yes.
Mr. Soba.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, very good. I believe we have a retirement this evening and has been patiently standing by with us through our community comment and the board's questions to the cabinet this evening. Ms. Cardamone, please read the resolution in.
The resolution reads, whereas Diane Lowe has served the Chippewa Valley School District faithfully and diligently for a period of 23 years as a parapro. Whereas Diane Lowe, through her leadership, has had a positive impact on the staff, students, and the community. Whereas Diane Lowe, a conscientious, loyal, hardworking employee, has elected to retire, and whereas Diane Lowe will be missed by all her school colleagues. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Chippewa Valley School District, not only on their behalf, but also that of the Superintendent of Schools and the administration, extend their thanks and appreciation for a job well done, as well as best wishes for the future. Be it further resolved that this resolution, having been adopted by the Board of Education of the Chippewa Valley School District on the first day of October 2020, be made a permanent part of the records of the school district, and a copy sent to Diane Lowe as an expression of our appreciation. Congratulations, Diane.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Roberts, did you want to take it from here?
Sorry, I had to unmute. So congratulations, Diane. I want to turn it over right now to her building principal, Andrea Lopez.
Hi, everybody. Good evening, board. Good evening, community. It really gives me a great pleasure to recognize Diane Lowe for her dedication to the staff, students, and community, not just at Mohawk Elementary, but throughout the entire district. Diane has worked in Chippewa for 23 years. She worked as a lunchroom monitor for 3.5, and then worked 7 years as a preschool aide back when Little Turtle was at the Community Ed building. She's worked as a preschool aide also at Mohawk, Erie, and then at the Little Turtle building. She's completing her 12th year career as a reading para, where she's worked 8.5 years at Clinton Valley and 3.5 years at Mohawk. Diane is kind and positive, and at Mohawk, she tried to motivate every child to do his or her best. She was always a team player, willing to share her knowledge and resources with her colleague. She actually, when she came to Mohawk from Clinton Valley, she helped us get started with the program, an intervention program that we hadn't had. And she was just an expert in it and very patient in training all of the other paras. I asked Diane what she felt her greatest accomplishment was, and she said it was witnessing the day-to-day progress that students had made in reading. Diane also really enjoyed being a Science Olympiad head coach, for which she did 6 years, 5 at Clinton Valley and then 1 at Mohawk. During retirement, Diane plans on writing books for beginning readers and spending time with her new grandson, and will be moving up north in a couple of years. She says she will miss the daily interaction with students and staff the most. And I can definitely tell you that we will miss her warm smile and bubbly personality that brighten everyone's day. So congratulations, Diane, and we will really, really miss you at Mohawk.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for the kind words. I want to say thank you to the school board and everyone in the administration for all your hard work during these difficult times. You know, I truly did enjoy working with the students, and I will miss that the most.
Diane, I
Thank
have a
you.
couple questions. Is that it? I
Okay.
don't want to cut you off. It's your time. Are you all
Pardon
set?
me?
I said, I don't want to cut you off. It's your time. Are you all
Okay.
set?
Well, that's all I really have to say.
All right. I have a couple questions for you, Diane.
Okay.
First of all, I heard a lot of jobs that you've worked in that Andrea ran through. Would you run through that list again of different jobs you've held in our district?
Well, I started out as a lunchroom monitor, and then I worked in the preschool. I was a preschool aide, and then I was a reading paraeducator for like the last 12 years. And then I also helped out with the Science Olympiad.
What was the event?
Well, actually, I was a head coach, but I actually did when parents, like most, like especially at Clinton Valley, I couldn't always have a parent coach. So I would fill in, or I would coax my husband into helping me. And so it was various different events.
So I noticed in the resolution that you retired on September 28th. Have you been able to squeeze in any dream vacations since then?
No, but probably when everything blows over with all this COVID, we want to go to Alaska.
Well, that's a good trip. I have one last question. I know that you worked in the lunchroom. What did you think of that job? Be nice.
Well, I would have to say, I started out at the middle school. So, I mean, not to say anything, but, everybody has different, they prefer different maybe age levels. I would say the middle school was a tougher age for me to handle than the elementary.
I worked in middle school too. I know what that's like.
I preferred the elementary.
Because we do have, if there's a little delay on your travel, we do have some lunch openings right now, if you'd like to do it. Oh, yeah, I can tell by that laugh, we're not going to be getting your application. So anyways, I just want to congratulate you, Diane. It's a wonderful career. And I always like to see people who started at one level and kept working their way up. And to even take on being a head coach for Science Olympiad is really impressive. So thank you. And I know some board members. Any board members would like to? I think Denise is going to unmute.
Yeah, I've known Diane since the Mohawk days. Her son and my daughter graduated from high school together. Diane has always been positive as a parent. She's always been willing to help. Her and her husband both have been great community members as well as a great employee. And I wish you all the best, Diane, and I enjoy your new grandson.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Did your son have a baby or?
My oldest son. My oldest son.
Okay, well, congratulations.
Yeah, not the one that graduated with your daughter. No.
Okay, no.
Yep.
Okay, well, good luck, Diane, and enjoy every moment. You certainly have been a positive influence and community member all these years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Frank, I think we're good there.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Mrs. Lowe, for your dedication to our community and especially our children in the community. And we wish you the very best in your retirement. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we will move on to at this time to F, old business, which there is none this evening. We'll move on to G, new business. G1, approved change order summary report for August 2020. Mr. Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr. Bednard. The recommended motions that the Chippewa Valley Schools Board of Education approve the 2018 bond issue change order summary report for the month of August 2020.
Motion?
This is Jill. I'll move.
Moved by Mr. McZack.
I'll second.
Supported by Ms. Cardamom. Rationale, please.
This work consists of changes to existing contracts for the purpose of owner requested work, deducts, code compliance, or hidden conditions on the construction and equipment projects. All amounts are within the contingency budget allocation. This report was reviewed with the Building and Site Subcommittee on Monday, September 14, 2020, and funding will come from the 2018 Building and Site Fund.
Questions or comments by the board? Hearing none, roll call vote, Ms. Cardamom, please.
Ms. Demingsack.
Yes.
Cardamone, yes. Ms. Aquino.
Please wait to refer to the affirmative, yes.
Okay. Mr. Bednar.
Yes.
Mr. Patzer.
Yes.
Ms. Pyden.
Yes.
Mr. Soba.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to G2, approved purchase of custodial equipment, Mr. Sutherland.
Recommended motions that the Chippewa Valley Schools Board of Education approve a contract award to R.E. Whitaker in the amount of $45,337.50.
I'll make that motion.
By Ms. Quito.
I'll support Mr. Bednard.
Supported by Mr. Soba. Rationale, please, Mr. Sutherland.
Aggressive pricing was obtained through the public bid 11.2021B. This recommendation was approved by the Building and Site on September 14, 2020. Funding will come from the 2018 Building and Site Fund.
Questions or comments by the board? Hearing none, roll call vote, Ms. Cardamone.
Ms. Aquino.
Yes.
Mr. Soba.
Yes.
Mr. Bednard.
Yes.
Cardamone, yes. Ms. Demingsack.
Yes.
Mr. Patzer.
Yes.
Ms. Pyden.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving to G3, approved tree removal services, Mr. Sutherland.
The recommended motions that the Chippewa Valley Schools Board of Education approve a contract award to Owen Tree Service based on per unit contract costs listed below.
Motion?
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Ms. Quino.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Pyden.
Pyden.
Rationale, please.
Aggressive pricing was obtained through public bid 12.2021. Funding will come from the general fund for this purchase.
Questions or comments by the board?
I have a question.
Sure.
I was wondering, there was no total on here. I realize that it's an hourly contract. Do we have any estimate of what we think the total costs are going to be for this contract?
Typically, again, you can see it's a per hour, per tree basis.
Right.
Typically, we don't typically know when trees fall or when We have problems where they fall on other people's property or on our property that we have to clean up. I can give you an idea. Last school year, we spent about $9,000 on tree removal. The prior year, we spent about $24,000.
Wow.
So it's all dependent on, what happens, what type of weather we have, and the type of storms that we have.
What is the length of this contract? Do we do this every year?
So this contract, I believe, most of these types of contracts are annual. And typically what we've done in the past is they're annual contracts that we can choose to renew on a year-by-year basis.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Sutherland, I would assume this also includes hauling away the logs that are generated from cutting down the tree, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's all cleanup also. Correct.
Okay. And so I noticed that at Huron that has not been done.
Okay.
There's a large pile of logs. Would that be this company or would that be the prior company?
I'm not sure. The prior company is this company, I believe. So let me find out that. Again, I don't know if they have two different crews who move it away, who carry off the stumps and things like that. But let me find out. I'll find out and let you know.
Okay, thanks. Because they've been there for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
It's a good point. Beth, I noticed since I've started walking a lot with the wife around the track at Miami, I've noticed a lot too. So I see a lot of parents going out and take from the yards that adjoin our school and just dumping their leaves and branches and stuff out there. I know it's very hard to police that matter, but we're talking about like things that fall on the playground in the school property proper. Correct, Scott?
Correct. Right. Fall on our property, anywhere on our property. And then sometimes we have some wooded lots where it falls on our stuff, our trees fall on other people's property. So obviously we would clean that up for them too.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any other questions by the board before we vote? Hearing none, we'll call a vote. Ms. Cardamone, please.
Ms. Aquino,
Yes.
Ms. Pyden,
Yes.
Mr. Bednard,
Yes.
Cardamone, yes. Ms. Mingzak,
Yes.
Mr. Patzer,
Yes.
Mr. Soba,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Moving G4, approve the extended COVID-19 learning plan. Mr. Roberts.
Sure, I'm going to read the recommended motion, Mr. Bednard, and then I'm going to make a brief statement after that because I need to explain something. So the recommended motion is that the Chippewa Valley Schools Board of Education approve the Chippewa Valley Schools extended COVID-19 learning plan for the 2020-21 school year. Now, you received the learning plan, and item number 3 has to do with how instruction will be delivered. So in that plan that you received, it indicates that we began the year in a remote start. If on G5, if you were to approve going to a hybrid plan, we will make a couple of changes in section 3 of the verbiage in order to indicate that that's what will happen on October 12th. So this is real simple. If you do not pass the motion on 5, the plan stays the way it is. If you pass the motion on 5, we're going to change a little bit of verbiage in item number 3 to indicate a hybrid plan on October 12th. Okay?
Okay, motion please.
I'll move.
Moved by Ms. Cardamone,
Supports, Jill.
supported by Mr. Mixak. Rationale, please.
Rationale. The Board of Education is required to approve this plan as written in Public Act 149. The plan will be revisited monthly.
Okay, questions or comments by the board? Okay, hearing none, Ms. Cardamone, roll call vote, please.
Cardamone, yes. Ms. Demingsack,
Yes.
Ms. Aquino,
Yes.
Mr. Bednard,
Yes.
Mr. Patzer,
Yes.
Ms. Pyden,
Yes.
Mr. Soba,
Yes.
Okay, thank
motion
you.
carries.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to G5. G5, approve limited return to the classroom. Mr. Roberts.
Recommended motion that the Chippewa Valley Schools Board of Education approve returning the following categories of students to school for in-person instruction. This will include the following students: grades K to 5, hybrid model; ECSE, Early Childhood Special Education, traditional model; Creative Learning Program, or CLP, grades K to 12, traditional model. The target date for return is Monday, October 12th, 2020.
Motion, please.
This is Jill. I'll move.
Moved by Mr. McZeck.
Frank Andy's support.
Support by Mr. Patzert. Okay, and rationale, please, Mr. Roberts.
This is part of our commitment to return students to school when safe. If conditions change, a return to remote learning is possible.
Okay, and I'd just like to add that also to that if this plan is approved, Clinton Valley, as you mentioned, will begin their part of that on October 19th.
Right. Yep.
Okay, questions, comments by the board?
Mr. Bednard, I'll start because I have a few comments. First, I would like to recognize the tremendous amount of work that has gone into formulating this plan, and the thoughtfulness of doing it, as well as the recognized commitment that our goal is to getting children back to school as soon as possible in a safe condition. With over 15,000 students, 1,800 employees, and all of their families, that is a monumental task. And I think that our staff and administration should be commended for their amount of work in creating this plan. However, I think that we can all agree that we're all frustrated, and we must be frustrated for different reasons. And I think we can all recognize that our goal has always been to return students to school when and if it's safe. The irony of the fact that we are conducting this meeting via Zoom is not lost on me. I have always had a problem asking people to do something that I myself will not do. And I think that it's problematic as well that this week we have made the list of outbreaks along with Utica and the MISD, and we are being asked to return students to school. I also think that it is problematic that we have an entire building that is closed due to a COVID outbreak, in addition to additional administrators and teachers who are either infected or in quarantine, as well as student athletes. From a safety perspective, we've talked a lot about numbers and the fact that they're trending in the right direction, but unfortunately, I don't feel we're there yet. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the CDC, and the World Health Organization recognize that in order to safely return to school, that the community should be at 5% or less. As of the 30th of September, so as of yesterday, we were still well above 5% in this community. I also have concerns, which I've addressed on numerous occasions, in regards to our PPE, the supplies we're using, and whether or not they comply with OSHA. I also appreciate that we have the largest high school in the state, and that a lot of the issues in terms of social distancing are just not possible in the environment that we have. We're also dealing with underreporting or the lack of reporting in terms of our outbreaks. My last point on safety is we do not have enough custodial help to actually clean up to the appropriate standards that are necessary to ensure we're keeping a sanitary environment. Educationally, we know that kids are behind. We know that they have been behind since March. In order to catch kids up, I have a concern about reducing instruction for the kids who are outside of the CVVA to half of what they are receiving now. We know in all actuality, it will actually be less than half of what they're receiving now, because they will be having to take hand washing breaks. They're going to be taking mask breaks and having to do other sanitization in their classroom area. The CVVA was never meant to be a permanent solution. If they are still proceeding at 5 days of instruction per week, integrating them back into the classroom with kids who are currently on hybrid and receiving 5 days of instruction over a 10-day period isn't going to work in the long run. We also have the fact that families did elect to have their children go remote and opted out of the CVVA based on the election to go remote and return to school when it is safe. At this point, that option is being taken away from them, and they're not able to choose the CVVA as an option. My final point is I have great difficulty in the fact that we do not have a plan for returning kids 6 through 12. I would feel more comfortable if we were not looking just at a K-5 plan, but rather a plan that went K through 12. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Podden. Board members, questions, comments?
So this is Jill. This is not a perfect plan by any means, and this is going to still be difficult, in my opinion, to do with the 2 days at home. But I listened to a class, and half of the day, I swear, is, can you let so-and-so back in? They get kicked out. I don't know how to log into this. I don't know. The missing instruction is going to be what? Listening to them try and figure out how to let people back in the class. I would much rather have them in class 2 to 3 times a week with their teacher focused on teaching them than what they're trying to do now. They're going to be washing their hands, but they're taking breaks at home too. They get breaks all the time, and they're eating all the time. So I mean, it's a joke, but it's not a joke, because they are. And why are they eating so much? I know I'm not the only one that's going through this. They're eating because they're bored. They're eating because they're frustrated. They don't know what to do. And I would give anything for 2 days of in-person with the teacher than 5 days on the computer of tech issues. And we don't really even have tech issues, and we have tech issues, because the tech issues can be, I don't want to sit in front of the computer anymore. That learning opportunity is lost then if they don't want to do that. So I think this is a step in the right direction of getting them all back in school. And I think it's a start. And I think this is where what we have, this is what we need to start with right now.
Okay, thank you. Other comments or questions by the board?
Frank, Andy.
Mr. Patrick.
Yeah. I've been involved in education for 56 years. I started working at Chippewa Valley in 1965. I've never seen anything like this. It's so sad. Kids going on their second year of losing their education. It's a lost generation. Everybody knows my stand is go back to school. Sometimes in life we take risks, but I don't think it's a big risk for these children. Statistics show that young children are relatively safe. My grandson just got over the virus. He's 18, in college. In 2 days, the aches and pains. I know everybody's different, but it's time for us in our community, get our kids back to school. And that's how I feel, and that's how I'm going to vote.
Okay, thank you. All right. Other questions or comments by the board regarding this return to school plan as being proposed?
I have some comments. This is Denise.
Ms. Quino, go ahead, please.
I'm not sure there is any right answer at this point in time. I have, like all of us have, received probably 100 or more emails throughout this process. I know that some people feel that there have been a group that's been outspoken and that maybe it's not representing the entire community. That's probably true. I also feel there are people that think that the virtual learning is going great. I'm only disappointed in myself because I didn't just approve the plan the first time it was brought forward by the administration. I mean, when we talked about it, I know we decided to go remote, and that's what but their original plan was really probably the right plan at that time. I think that there is a trend down in the cases, and I noticed one thing: each person that spoke about statistics had different numbers. So it just depends on what you're looking at. I think that we have to at least try to go back to school. And I don't think we can be the only school district in Macomb County that isn't able to go back to school. Yes, there are risks. I am very concerned about the mask wearing. I think it's extremely important. And I don't think this is going to be done without its challenges. But I think we have to start somewhere. And I think it's in the best interest to begin in a slow process and then see where it takes us. I am also interested in a 6 to 12 plan in the near future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other comments, questions by the board?
Mr. Bednar, I just have one kind of point of clarification. As of right now, we are not the only school district in the county that has not returned or is making that plan. And in fact, neighboring school districts around us who have attempted this, like L'Anse Creuse, Port Huron, Almont, Lapeer, Romeo, Richmond, have all had outbreaks and have had to close buildings, which would be as disruptive as what is occurring right now.
All right.
As I said earlier, I don't disagree with you, Beth. I think it is going to be disruptive. I think that this entire process has been disruptive. I think that it has become very political. And I think that I don't want people in the community to think that I would change my approach based on just I do respect and listen to the community, but I want to listen to everyone, and there is no right answer for every person. There really is not. Yes, other districts are having struggles, and I think we will have struggles too. But I think that we at least have to make an attempt and do our best, our very best to protect the students and the staff to the best of our ability. That's extremely important to me. But that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Further comments by the board? I guess I'll close by just saying that myself, being a heavy advocate, start remote, I don't feel it was bad at that time. I think that our numbers were trending upward. It was a hot spot. We were really scared, all of us were, to open those schools and turn it into something bad for our community and have the spread go on. since, as been mentioned, the numbers came down 2 points, 8 substantially down. And I've really struggled with this decision, as the rest of the board has, with the community comments we've received. And again, I want to thank the parents for their accommodating on our meetings, and they were very respectful and well intentioned. And I'm sure the board, whether they agree or not, the comments appreciated that, along with the emails. So many emails. So, I can assure you that the board members have read every email. I tried to answer a bunch, but I was running out of time in my day to answer every one. But I did read every one that was sent. Some were sent a number of times because they weren't sure if we read the first time. But anyways, we did read those comments, for better or for worse. I've really struggled with children in the district who are special needs, and the resources they were not getting. As time has gone on here, and school's been remote, I've really struggled with the idea that we have English as second language children. We have children that who just don't have the support at home, or have the parents that are working, and so on. And I just struggle with that versus looking at the numbers of COVID and risk to children and so on. I had sit down with Mr. Roberts, and I had a long talk about it because I have great faith in Mr. Roberts, and he's a very compassionate man, and he cares about every one of our children in the community. And he assures me that they did the planning. They have looked after what has to happen for this school to open. I can't absolutely say it's going to be 100% safe. There is some dangers involved. And I feel horribly that we're going to change over at this time, after this vote perhaps, to a hybrid where those families who were liking the remote are having to move with us because of our inability to bring them into CVA until a semester ends, for many reasons that have been explained for several meetings now. I want to mention, though, we did have one parent who had a child who did not want them to go back into the classroom in any way, sort of form, because of medical reasons. It was mentioned earlier, if they have medical reasons, that could be evaluated and perhaps a placement made for those children, providing we're going to hybrid. But I struggled with the special ed children, and I struggled with those lost children that didn't have the support at home, didn't have the computer at home, just were losing out, as Mr. Patzer said, 2 years and nothing. At some point, I sat with Mr. Roberts, and he assured me that this was very important, and that his staff and the teachers are going to do their very best. And he assured me that we could get through this. So I just want to make that comment before we voted this evening. I want to thank the board for all their work on this, and their conscientious work and thoughtful work that the board's thought through this. We have not agreed on a lot of these topics all through this matter, starting from last March. So I want to thank the administration and the cabinet for putting these plans together and working hard. I know, as Mr. Aquino said, that originally we were going to start a hybrid, but with the numbers were rising, many of us got nervous and just want to take a breather for a second and kind of see what's going on. I'm not really rest assured, as Ms. Piden said, that it's a whole lot better than it was then. But again, because of these lost children and also these special ed children are just losing out on these resources, and our parents are needing help in that area, I will be voting shortly to show you what I mean. So I want to make those comments tonight and thank the community and thank the schools for what they've done. All right. Any further comments by the board? Okay. With that, we will have a roll call vote. Ms. Cardamone.
Ms. Demingsack.
Yes.
Mr. Patzer.
Yes.
Ms. Aquino.
Yes.
Mr. Bednard.
Yes.
Cardamone, yes. Ms. Piden.
No.
Mr. Soba.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. All right. That'll cover that for the evening. So we will be getting hybrid, except for Clinton Valley, on October 12th. With that, we'll move on to H, Union Communications. I don't know if we have any union members here that were wishing to speak to the board. Ms. Monier White, was there anybody union leadership that wanted to address the board this evening?
No.
Okay. On to I, administration reports, Mr. Roberts.
There are no reports this evening.
Okay. K, of and by the board.
Frank, I have something I want to say. I agree with everything that you said, Mr. Bednard. I think that this is absolutely probably the hardest decision that I have had to make, and I'm sure that there's more coming as we look at the other secondary level. I would just implore the community to be, compassionate and patient with each other, with the teachers, with their children. This is going to be a really difficult adjustment for everyone. And the insults, the name calling, the belittling, it doesn't help the process. It doesn't help the people that are working tirelessly to make this a success. That's all.
Mr. Bednar.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Roberts, I just want to make sure that there is a clear contact person for our community, for families that have deep concerns at this point, and that there's a clear path for them to contact and talk to somebody.
Sure, Andy. If people contact us, they can call the front desk, and they would be the calls would be transferred to educational services.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bednard?
Yeah, Mr. Soba.
I just wanted to also thank the administration and all the employees for all the hard work that went into this. I know they spent endless hours on getting this plan together and making sure that everyone can be as safe as possible to get this going. And it really shows the hard work that you guys all put in. And I know I definitely appreciate it as well as the rest of the board does. So thank you.
Any further comments by the board?
I have, excuse me, I have one. I think I've said this multiple times throughout this process. Since the beginning of summer, I am extremely proud and thankful to our administration and our teams who worked so tirelessly on this and answered an inordinate amount of questions, both from the community and us. I know I have never, as a board member in 23 years, submitted more questions and concerns that I've had since the beginning of our decision-making process. I'd also like to commend every teacher for the unbelievable response they have had to remote learning. And I think they've done a outstanding job and have gone, I mean, just, it's phenomenal, really. So anyway, that's it. I just want to thank everybody involved. And I know that this has been really a long, tough summer and fall. And I just am looking forward to some normalcy for the kids, but not without a little concern, of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just have one thing, it's Jill. So we talked about 6 through 12, and Mr. Roberts, I believe you said that, you guys have been working on a plan for them. Is it something that can be presented to us so that when we're ready, we're just ready to vote on it? Like, I mean, what are we meet Monday and then we don't meet again for, another 2 weeks, and Christmas is going to be here before you know it. So what can we establish a plan for discussing 6 to 12? Yeah.
Timeline, right?
Yeah.
You'd like a timeline.
Right.
Sure. And I'll just speak briefly to that right now. We've talked about this, and our timeline would be with secondary to begin with a hybrid plan on November the 4th.
Okay.
So on Monday, we can, at our board meeting on Monday, we can have a discussion about that. And we can go over nuances in the plan for secondary. The plan is basically the same, other than you're dealing with larger buildings. So the protocols might look a little bit different. So we can talk about that. And then depending on what the board is thinking at that time, we can bring back a motion on October 15th that would put us in place to commence with the program on November the 4th. So the timeline will work.
And
Okay.
I'm getting ahead because you're going to talk about it Monday, but is this like all secondary or like middle school phased and then high school phased?
Yeah, no, our thinking on that right now is to start on November 4th with both middle and high school, all grades. But we've talked a lot about this, and that's the conversation that we can have on Monday to kind of help you understand what our thinking is. And you may add some things that we haven't thought about. And so, you know, we may end up modifying that plan, but I think that's where we can start on this coming Monday.
And then I just have one other thing, and it's about the mask mandate. I checked with a friend whose kids go to a private school, and October 5th, even private schools will be wearing masks at their desks because that is the new mandate. So they may not be doing it now, but they will be shortly. So, I mean, I know I don't want to wear a mask either, but that's what's required of us to get us back into the classroom. So I think that I think people will be surprised when they realize that other schools they're having to wear their masks too. So that's it.
Okay. No further comment. I appreciate the board's work tonight and the administration's work tonight. And of course, all the teachers, as was said, you know, every note we got, every email we got, most of them just applauded how awesome our teachers were at every school and really working hard to try to make that remote work. And we really appreciate that. As Mr. Roberts said at the outset 2 weeks ago, this just brings us more challenges or additional challenges now, which we'll have to work through. So, and try to get this back to some kind of normal scene. But this is the first step. It's a starting point, I think, as one parent had said tonight. Okay, and with that, I'll call for an adjournment. Have a motion.
I'll move.
Support.
Cardamone moves.
Mr. Sobal moved. Supported by?
Cardamone moved. I supported.
Okay, Ms. Cardamone moved, supported by Mr. Sobal. Roll call vote, please, Ms. Cardamone.
Cardamone, yes. Soba?
Yes.
Ms. Aquino?
Yes.
Mr. Bednar?
Yes.
Ms. Mingsack?
Yes.
Mr. Patzer?
Yes.
Ms. Pyden?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Excellent. Thank you. School board meeting will adjourn until Monday. The adjournment time is 8:20. 8:20 p.m. is our adjournment time. Thank you again, everybody. Have a good night, and we will be discussing more come this Monday. Thank you.